Chapter 119. Qin Wentian stood there, inclining his head as he stared at the skies. The handsome face of the youth was filled with tranquility and indifference. That radiant smile on his face was filled with an intense self-confidence. The sunlight shone on his handsome face, adding to his beauty. At this moment, the youth of Qin Wentian seemed to possess a unique charm. What a handsome fellow! At this moment, at the location of the Mo clan, Mo Qingqing's father couldn't help but smile when he saw the radiant smile on the face of the youth. It's truly rare for the Qin clan to have such a son. This youth has walked through storms, and with his own hard work, he finally stood on the greatest stage in Chu. Let's hope that he can create a miracle. The members of the Mo clan sent their blessings to Qin Wentian. I will. Mo Qingqing gently smiled. At this moment, Qin Wentian was truly good-looking. The spectators couldn't help but have strange expressions on their faces when they saw the smile on Qin Wentian's face. Could it be that he really didn't care that he would be blasted off the platform in the first battle, completely vanishing from the Junlin banquet? Or could it be that he was blindly confident that he would be able to defeat Jiang Xiu of the 10 prodigies? At this moment, an explosive sound rang out on the first towering platform. Luo Qianqiu defeated his opponent with a single punch. Because he didn't take the initiative to concede, his opponent was directly flung through the air after being struck by the lightning bolt. The bones in his body were all fractured, and his meridians were all crippled. This was the quickest battle, and Luo Qianqiu only spared his opponent's life. It was as though he was announcing to the crowd in the most tyrannical manner. This year's Junlin banquet was a stage that belonged to him. At the same time, on the 9th towering platform, Jiang Xiu's aura erupted forth as an intense sword qi howled in rage. In his hands, a sword condensed from astral energy appeared. On the stage of the Junlin banquet, it was naturally forbidden to use divine weapons. If not, how could there be any fairness? A raging sword wind swept through the air as Jiang Xiu released his sword-type astral soul. Momentarily, the sword intent in his surroundings rose once again, becoming even more tyrannical. Ear-piercing sounds rang out as Jiang Xiu's aura continued to rise, all the way to the peak. Even though the crowd was far away, they could still feel the rising aura and sword intent. Their hearts trembled slightly. Jiang Xiu hadn't even started fighting, but he had already unleashed his strongest aura. He didn't hide any of his strength in preparation for the upcoming battle. There was no need to mention the confidence contained in his actions. At the same time, he wanted to announce to Qin Wentian that in front of Jiang Xiu, a so-called genius like him was nothing. He wanted to use the most tyrannical and direct method to crush Qin Wentian. He was Jiang Xiu, one of the 10 prodigies of the royal capital. The humiliation he suffered that day in the Emperor's Star Academy would be repaid today. You still have a choice now. Leave this stage that doesn't belong to you. Do you want to get off the stage yourself, or do you want me to do it? Jiang Xiu said calmly, as if he intended to humiliate Qin Wentian. Within Qin Wentian's body, the 7 arterial pathways within his body erupted with power. The astral energy within his body seemed to be roaring, and his aura was similarly soaring. From today onwards, the name of Jiang Xiu will no longer be part of the 10 prodigies of the royal capital. Qin Wentian's voice slowly drifted out. Within the calmness of his voice, there was an unparalleled self-confidence. Such self-confidence caused the crowd to be taken aback. No one would have thought that in the face of the 10 prodigies, Qin Wentian would be able to say such words. From today onwards, the name of Jiang Xiu will no longer be part of the 10 prodigies of the royal capital. 7th level of arterial circulation. In the direction of the Emperor's Star Academy, a smile appeared on Mustang's face as he sensed the aura emanating from Qin Wentian. Speaking of which, he felt somewhat ashamed. This disciple of his had outstanding talent, yet he hadn't taught Qin Wentian anything at all. For cultivation techniques, Qin Wentian already possessed them. For innate techniques, Qin Wentian was extremely proficient in them. This also caused Mustang to feel extremely depressed. He understood that this meant that based on his own capabilities, it was impossible for him to guide this disciple of his. He was unable to control Qin Wentian's talent, which was why such a situation had occurred. Naturally, Mustang was proud of Qin Wentian. Qin Wentian was the disciple he had discovered in the Sky Harmony City. Today, was Qin Wentian going to announce his existence to the entire Chu country? Mustang was filled with anticipation, as well as nervousness. Would Qin Wentian be able to defeat Jiang Xiu? When the crowd sensed Qin Wentian's aura, they were all taken aback. It was said that when he entered the Emperor's Star Academy, he was only at the body refinement realm. In just a short span of a year, he had already broken through to the 7th level of arterial circulation. In addition to his achievements in the Tao of Divine Inscriptions, even if he didn't perform well during the Junlin banquet, no one would doubt him too much. That was fate. He was already outstanding enough. His cultivation base at the 7th level of arterial circulation similarly stimulated Yizhan, Lu Yan, Bai Qingsong and Autumn Snow. Yizhan had once hunted down Qin Wentian, but now, they were no longer on the same level. Bai Qingsong and Autumn Snow also knew that a year ago, Qin Wentian wasn't at the body refinement realm. In reality, at that time, Qin Wentian had only just started cultivating. The other battles on the other platforms were quickly concluded. However, many people didn't notice that none of the other platforms could attract the attention of the crowd like the 9th platform. Not only because of the fame of the two of them, but also because of Jiang Xiu's pride, as well as Qin Wentian's self-confidence. Under the attentive gazes of the crowd, Jiang Xiu moved. In that instant, his sword was as cold as water. In an instant, his silhouette appeared in front of Qin Wentian. With a flick of his palms, his sword was like a meteor shower, blotting out the entire sky, resplendent and resplendent. Sword like a meteor shower, Jiang Xiu has already cultivated the starpoint swordplay to such a high level. A single sword strike from him is more than enough to seal off all of Qin Wentian's escape routes, enveloping him in a rain of swords. No wonder he's one of the 10 prodigies of the royal capital. Expressions of admiration appeared on the faces of the spectators as they stared at Jiang Xiu's astral sword. The 10 prodigies of the royal capital weren't just because of their fame. Since they were able to climb up the rankings, it meant that they had proven themselves before. Qin Wentian didn't move. He calmly stood there, as though what appeared in front of him wasn't a life-reaping sword. His countenance was as calm as ever, and there wasn't even a single astral weapon in his hands. Such a scene caused many to feel surprised. Was this self-confidence, or was it arrogance? Killing intent flickered in Jiang Xiu's eyes. Since Qin Wentian was courting death, he was willing to grant Qin Wentian his wish. If Qin Wentian died on the stage of the Junlin banquet, even if the Emperor's Star Academy wanted to protect Qin Wentian, they wouldn't be able to say anything. The rain of swords contained a terrifying killing intent as they shot towards Qin Wentian. Qin Wentian could naturally feel that Jiang Xiu's killing intent had been aroused. At this moment, Qin Wentian released his perception to the maximum as a mysterious energy permeated the air. This was the Grand Dream Astral Soul. A sword-type astral soul would allow the astral energy in his body to be infused with the sharpness of the sword. A lightning-type astral soul would be infused with the savagery of thunder and lightning. Naturally, the Grand Dream Astral Soul would also be infused with the domain of dreams. In that instant, Jiang Xiu felt as though he was drifting and unreal. It was as though the attack of his sword was somewhat illusory. However, Qin Wentian was different from him. This was a power that belonged to him. Releasing the Grand Dream Astral Soul, Qin Wentian was immersed in his own domain, allowing him to better perceive everything. At the same time, he could also sense the rain of swords. Every sword strike was bone-chilling cold, as though it wanted to reap away the lives of his enemies. However, Qin Wentian's perception was able to clearly see the trajectory of every sword strike. His body finally moved. His entire body seemed to transform into an illusory shadow, drifting erratically in the air. Not only that, every step he took wasn't too big, but it was extremely ingenious as he shuttled through the rain of swords. It was as though the swords couldn't even touch his body. As his spirit moved, his body moved. 9 Heavenly Garuda Movement Technique, Divine Movement Realm. The countenance of the elder from the Emperor's Star Academy stiffened. This was the highest realm of the 9 Heavenly Garuda Movement Technique, the Divine Movement Realm that surpassed the Perfection Realm. Seems like this young man's comprehension ability towards innate techniques has always been overshadowed by his talent in other aspects. They silently mused in their hearts. This was an innate technique that almost no one could cultivate. Qin Wentian, who was at the 7th level of the arterial circulation realm, had actually cultivated the arterial circulation technique to the pinnacle. The Rain of Swords actually had no way to land a hit on his body. A movement technique that had stepped into the divine movement realm was simply too perfect. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that in this Junlin banquet, Qin Wentian's movement technique was unparalleled. Jiang Xiu's countenance changed as he abruptly changed his stance. His sword intent continued to rise. However, at the instant he changed his stance, Qin Wentian's body also moved. Stomping on the ground, astral energy flowed through his arterial circulation to his legs. In that instant, his silhouette instantly appeared in front of Jiang Xiu. That terrifying speed caused Jiang Xiu to feel as though everything was surreal. At this moment, Jiang Xiu made an extremely decisive and wise move. He abandoned his sword. His sword directly transformed into astral light as he slashed out with his right palm. The sharpness of his attack was akin to that of a sword. If it landed on Qin Wentian's body, it would definitely be able to split Qin Wentian's body into two. Slashing sword art. Although it isn't an extremely powerful innate technique, it's extremely useful in such a situation. Jiang Xiu's ability to adapt in a battle is extremely strong. Many in the crowd couldn't help but to praise. The spectators in the spectator stands were all people with vast knowledge and experience. Regarding innate techniques that weren't of a high level, they were all familiar with them and had even come into contact with them before. Unless it was a high-level innate technique or a secret manual from a sect or clan, it would be extremely difficult to come into contact with it. Bzzz. Qin Wentian had long prepared his falling mountain palms as he blasted out. The falling mountain palms were extremely sharp, and were suitable for combat at a certain distance. Under such a close combat situation, the killing power of the falling mountain palms would definitely be extremely terrifying. In that instant, it was as though a mountain peak had smashed down on Jiang Xiu. The sharpness of the sword was instantly destroyed. The might of the falling mountain palms executed by Qin Wentian was so strong that it caused Jiang Xiu to feel as though he was suffocating. How could a cultivator at the 7th level of arterial circulation be able to execute such a powerful falling mountain palms? Crushing everything in its path, destroying everything in its path. This made Jiang Xiu feel as though he was in a dream. Jiang Xiu retreated, and at the same time, he gathered a terrifying amount of energy. In that instant, boundless sword light converged together, transforming into a terrifying gigantic sword that slashed out towards the falling mountain palms. A thunderous sound rang out as the gigantic sword slammed into the descending falling mountain palms. The gigantic sword sliced through, but it was unable to break through. This caused Jiang Xiu's movements to falter for an instant. This instant was sufficient to determine everything. Qin Wentian waved his palms, and in that instant, a beam of sword light flashed past. Along with the sword light, a bloody glow appeared. My sword contains killing intent. I'll sever your sword-wielding arm. As the sound of Qin Wentian's voice faded, Jiang Xiu let out a blood-curdling scream as he retreated unceasingly. His left hand clutched onto his right arm as fresh blood flowed unceasingly, dripping onto the platform. One of his arms fell to the ground. Silence reigned in the air. My sword contains killing intent. I'll sever your sword-wielding arm. From today onwards, Jiang Xiu would no longer be part of the 10 prodigies of the royal capital. However, Qin Wentian wasn't proficient in sword arts. Where did the sword light come from? Chapter 120. On the 9th towering platform of the Junlin banquet, the focus of everyone's attention. The ending of this battle was undoubtedly shocking. Ranked number 10 of the 10 prodigies, Jiang Xiu, had his right arm severed by Qin Wendian in a single strike. Just like what Qin Wendian had said, from now onwards, Jiang Xiu's name would no longer be part of the 10 prodigies. Who said that Qin Wendian was only participating in the Junlin banquet to temper himself? He only used a single battle to announce to the people of Chu that a year was too long. In this year's Junlin banquet, he would unleash his own brilliance. He used a single battle to announce who was the true king of the 9th towering platform. Jiang Xiu, who was the most favored on the 9th towering platform, a contender for the top 9 rankings, had been eliminated after a single battle. What was even more tragic was that he had lost an arm. How ironic was this? Those from the Emperor's Star Academy thought even more deeply. Before this, Jiang Xiu had wanted to humiliate Qin Wendian in front of the Emperor's Star Monument, saying that Qin Wendian's current achievements were all due to his good luck and fortuitous encounters. He, one of the 10 prodigies, actually looked down on Qin Wendian's achievements. However, in the short span of a month, the person he had doubted only used one battle and a few attacks to cut off his arm on the grandest stage. How could the title of the number 1 genius of the Emperor's Star Academy be undeserved? In fact, the crowd could already foresee that from today onwards, Qin Wendian's talent would be re-evaluated. Was he merely the number 1 genius of the Emperor's Star Academy? This glory was far from enough. In the spectator stands, some of the more powerful people were silently analyzing the earlier battle. From a certain perspective, Jiang Xiu's strength had been severed before he could even unleash it. Qin Wendian's control of the rhythm of the battle was too fast, too perfect. Although Jiang Xiu had initiated the attack, the instant he executed the Garuda movement technique, the situation was already under Qin Wendian's control. No matter how powerful Jiang Xiu's sword techniques were, he had no chance to use them. Qin Wendian was like a natural-born combatant. He had an extremely acute sense of combat, grasping the moment of opportunity to seize victory. Such talent was truly terrifying. However, they couldn't understand Qin Wendian's earlier sword strike. Those from the major powers had investigated Qin Wendian before, but they had never heard of Qin Wendian using sword techniques before. Earlier, if he had used palm techniques or fist techniques, he wouldn't have been able to sever Jiang Xiu's arm in an instant. Only a sword technique would be able to do that. Actually, to Qin Wendian, who had comprehended the connection between innate techniques and divine imprints, as well as the ability to use divine imprints to condense his divine energy, it wasn't strange for him to be able to use a simple sword technique. He was too familiar with divine imprints, and he only needed an instant to condense the astral energy in his body into the shape of a sword. This was something unimaginable to others. But to Qin Wendian, it was extremely simple. In fact, he didn't even think about the sword light from earlier. At this moment, he was calmly looking at Jiang Xiu, as calm and indifferent as he was when he ascended the platform. It was as though what he had just done was an extremely simple and insignificant thing. He was very clear of his goal for participating in the Junlin banquet. Defeating Jiang Xiu wasn't something worthy of pride. Not only that, he didn't even defeat Jiang Xiu in his strongest state. Is there still a need to battle? Qin Wendian calmly spoke. He didn't use words to humiliate Jiang Xiu. That sword light from earlier was far more effective than any words he could say. Jiang Xiu's countenance was completely devoid of color. Only his arm was bleeding profusely. He was Jiang Xiu, one of the 10 prodigies of the royal capital. Today, he was originally looking forward to displaying his dazzling radiance. However, the sad thing was that he only had a single chance to battle on the Junlin banquet. And that single chance was to sever his arm. Because the sword in his hand was filled with killing intent, Qin Wendian had severed it. How humiliating was that? At this moment, his entire body was trembling, especially when he saw the calm and indifferent expression in Qin Wendian's eyes. What else could he say? What else could he say? Turning around, Jiang Xiu walked down the platform. How much anticipation did he have for this Junlin banquet? However, there was only one chance. A smile appeared on Qin Wentian's face as he gazed at Jiang Xiu's back. Inclining his head slightly, he stared at the sun in the sky, before shifting his gaze onto the azure jadeite dragon seat. The crowd was stunned when they saw this. Qin Wentian seemed to want to say something. My name is Qin Wentian, son of Qin Chuan from the Qin clan of Sky Harmony City. My name is Qin Wentian. A radiant smile appeared on his face as Qin Wentian slowly spoke. It was unknown who he was speaking to, or why he was speaking. His name was Qin Wentian, son of Qin Wentian from the Qin clan of Sky Harmony City. This seemed to be a silent declaration. Chu Tianjiao saw Qin Wentian's gaze landing on him, his countenance as calm as still water. Was this a declaration to him? Qin Wentian wanted to prove himself through the Junlin banquet, so that Chu Tianjiao wouldn't dare to act recklessly against Qin Wu and Qin Chuan. Weakness and forbearance wouldn't allow others to notice your existence. Only with great strength and talent would others feel trepidation. Not only that, strength and talent would be able to bring about strong support, such as the Emperor's Star Academy and the Divine Weapon Pavilion. Naturally, this was also a double-edged sword. When you radiated the light, those swords hidden in the shadows could stab you at any time. Qin Wentian turned and walked down the platform. Although he had only fought a single battle, it was as though he had let the spectators see him in a new light. That youth who had once stood amidst the wind and snow, had a determination and tenacity that ordinary people didn't have. When did you learn sword-type innate techniques? Luo Huan smiled as she stared at Qin Wentian, her eyes flashing with a strange light. I was born with it. Qin Wentian shrugged as he jokingly replied. Your skin has grown thicker. Luo Huan's smile was exceptionally beautiful. This junior brother of hers, in the short span of a year, had already created an unimaginable miracle. Back then when she went to the Sky Harmony City to fetch Qin Wentian, she didn't expect that he would have such a glorious future a year later. Wentian, although your movement technique is powerful, the distance between you and the sword is too close. In the future, it's best to be more cautious when fighting. Qin Yao reminded Qin Wentian. Although Qin Wentian's movement technique was extremely powerful, she couldn't help but feel worried. After all, that rain of swords, each and every one of them contained a terrifying killing power. If Jiang Xiu's strength was slightly stronger, he would be able to unleash a sword attack that Qin Wentian wouldn't be able to evade. Got it, sis. Qin Wentian cupped Qin Yao's face as he smiled, causing Qin Yao to glare at him. However, a warm current flowed in her heart. Earlier, the words spoken by Qin Wentian on the platform had caused her heart to warm up. Where's that fellow, Fan Lu? Qin Wentian couldn't help but ask when he saw that Fan Lu had disappeared. He went to the Drunken Wonder Pavilion to place his bet. Luo Huan couldn't help but blink her eyes when she heard Qin Wentian asking about Fan Lu. That fellow was truly a weirdo. When he saw Qin Wentian defeating Jiang Xiu, he immediately went to the Drunken Wonder Pavilion, which was a branch of Heaven's Wonder. Talent. Qin Wentian rolled his eyes. This fatty really knew how to think of ideas. The battles on the 9 platforms were still ongoing, and it would continue for a long time. Because Qin Wentian had already fought a battle, he had plenty of time to rest. He had to wait until everyone on the 9th platform had finished their battles before it would be his turn to fight again. Although the judges had the authority to order the battles, they still had to take into account the number of times a contestant could fight. They couldn't allow a contestant to continue fighting just because they wanted to target a certain person. That would be unfair. Sikong Mingyue from Snowcloud, the 2nd sword, the 3rd sword, and the 5th knight of the 7 knights had all displayed their strength. However, they had yet to meet an opponent who was on par with them. Most probably, all of them were still concealing some of their true strength. After all, it was extremely rare for a dark horse like Qin Wentian to be able to defeat one of the 10 prodigies in his first battle. After the first round, the spectators had a basic understanding of the battles on the 9 platforms. The 9th platform, which seemed to be the weakest, was actually the one with the most intense battles. Many outstanding geniuses emerged from that platform, and it was the platform with the most intense battles. Even for those who could advance to the next round, it was still shrouded in mystery. Qin Wentian, who had defeated Jiang Xiu, had an extremely high possibility of occupying one of the 9 platforms. Although the 9th knight was a female, her strength was extremely powerful as well. She easily defeated an opponent who wasn't weak at all. Luo Chen only used a single strike to chop off one of his opponent's arms. This caused the spectators to sigh in admiration at the ruthlessness of the Azura faction. Other than them, there were also some other powerful geniuses on the 9th platform. Luo Kaiyang from the Divine Wind Academy was also not bad. The opponent he defeated in the first round was someone who was highly regarded by the spectators, yet he easily eliminated his opponent, leaving a deep impression on the spectators. However, only 2 people could advance to the next round on the 9th platform. This meant that these people would sooner or later clash against each other, and the weaker one would be eliminated. At this moment, Luo Kaiyang was in the midst of a crowd. Beside him, there was a beautiful young lady leaning against him as she smiled. "Kaiyang, with your strength, you will definitely have a chance. Don't worry little you, as long as I don't encounter Qin Wentian, 7th Knight or Luo Cheng, I will do my best to advance to the next round." Luo Kaiyang nodded his head. The people he feared the most were Qin Wentian and 7th Knight. Qin Wentian had defeated Jiang Xiu, and 7th Knight had no idea how strong she was. Lin Yu smiled as she nodded her head. So this beautiful young lady from the Divine Wind Academy was none other than one of the 4 great beauties of the Sky Harmony City, Lin Yu. Now that she was nearing the age of 17, she was even more charming than before, and was currently in a relationship with the young genius from the Divine Wind Academy, Luo Kaiyang. They're calling the names. Luo Kaiyang's gaze shifted to the platform, and not long after, his voice reached the direction of the 9th platform as the judge announced in a loud voice. The 9th platform, Qin Wentian vs. Luo Kaiyang. As the sound of the judge's voice faded, the spectators froze for a moment before smiles appeared on their faces. Was this judge doing this to increase the viewing pleasure of the spectators? Or did he have a grudge against Qin Wentian? The countenances of Luo Kaiyang and Lin Yu froze. The second battle, against Qin Wentian. Chapter 121. Qin Wentian. Lin Yu's countenance changed, her countenance unsightly. How could this be? Based on Luo Kaiyang's combat prowess, he should have been able to advance very far. She had hoped that Luo Kaiyang would meet Qin Wentian as late as possible. But this was only the second battle, and Luo Kaiyang was already fighting against Qin Wentian. It's Lin Yu. Qin Yao noticed Luo Kaiyang standing beside Lin Yu. As Qin Wentian shifted his gaze, a strange expression involuntarily appeared on his face. A year ago, he was still in Sky Harmony City, and at that time, he had a small conflict with Lin Yu. "Kaiyang, be careful," Lin Yu reminded. She didn't expect that in a year's time, she would be in contact with Qin Wentian, not to mention that they were in such a situation. The participants of the 9 towering platforms all walked up. Qin Wentian and Luo Kaiyang stood on the 9th platform. Luo Kaiyang stared at Qin Wentian with a heavy expression. He released both of his astral souls without any hesitation. His first astral soul was actually a suit of armor, which enveloped his body in a layer of astral light. Luo Kaiyang's first astral soul was a defense-type astral soul, which allowed his body's defensive capabilities to be extremely high. When an attack landed on his body, it could even reduce the impact of the impact. His second astral soul was even more resplendent. It was a gigantic axe, a powerful attack-type astral soul. Luo Kaiyang's choice of astral soul had evidently been carefully crafted by himself. An attack-type great axe, coupled with a defense-type armor, could be used for both offense and defense. "Please." Luo Kaiyang held on to the astral great axe in his hands, as he made a gesture of invitation to Qin Wentian. "Please." Qin Wentian returned the gesture, as an astral hammer materialized in his hands. Since Luo Kaiyang was proficient in both offense and defense, he was willing to use offense as defense. His astral souls were obviously superior to Luo Kaiyang's, although his cultivation base was slightly lower. However, the spectators seemed to have forgotten about Qin Wentian's cultivation base, and treated him as someone at the 9th level of arterial circulation. This was because he had defeated Jiang Xiu, one of the 10 prodigies of the capital. In that battle, Qin Wentian won because of his superior body movements, his innate judgment, and that wonderful sword move at the end. However, it was still unknown how strong Qin Wentian really was. Therefore, many people were paying attention to this battle. Would Qin Wentian continue to win to consolidate his position in the hearts of the people? Luo Kaiyang moved. Although he didn't have an agility-type astral soul, his speed was still extremely fast. However, no matter how fast he was still not as fast as Qin Wentian's 9 Heavens Rock skill. Qin Wentian was even faster than him. Suddenly, the hammer smashed down with an incomparably domineering momentum. The divine energy within his body erupted forth. This was the divine energy condensed from the astral energy of the 5th heavenly layer, causing a rumbling sound to echo out in the air. Luo Kaiyang didn't want to be outdone. He wildly chopped out with his axe. The 9 forms of splitting mountain had boundless power. Bang! The terrifying energies collided against each other, as the astral energy transformed into a tempest. Their gazes met, and Luo Kaiyang only felt a beam of light shooting out from Qin Wentian's eyes. In that instant, he felt drowsy, as though he wanted to fall asleep and enter into a dream. And in that dream, Qin Wentian was like a primordial giant, with boundless strength. What's going on? Luo Kaiyang felt a surge of terror in his heart, only to see Qin Wentian's giant hammer smashing down once again. His 9 forms of splitting mountain was thrown into disarray, and he could only lift his axe to defend. Rumble, rumble, rumble. Continuous violent attacks rained down, causing the crowd to be stunned. Why did the battle suddenly become so violent? At this moment, the berserk Qin Wentian's attack speed was so fast that it shocked the spectators. After Luo Kaiyang lost the initiative, there was no way for him to recover. Regardless of attack speed or movement speed, he couldn't compare to Qin Wentian. Not only that, his strength wasn't enough to turn the situation around in an instant. Lin Yu paled when she saw this scene. She shouted, "Kaiyang, concede." Luo Kaiyang gritted his teeth, feeling unwillingness in his heart. But at this instant, the mountain-like giant hammer smashed down once again, shattering the astral great axe in his hands. Luo Kaiyang's countenance was deathly pale as he stared blankly at the descending giant hammer. Even though he had an extremely powerful defense, the impact of the giant hammer was sufficient to shatter his brain. No. Lin Yu's countenance paled as her eyes reddened. She didn't dare to imagine what would happen next. The giant hammer continued to descend, but just as it was about to smash into Luo Kaiyang's head, it abruptly transformed into a constellation of astral light, disappearing from sight. Time seemed to have stopped for an instant. Beads of perspiration dripped down from Luo Kaiyang's forehead. His gaze landed on Qin Wentian, only to see a radiant smile on Qin Wentian's face. Luo Kaiyang couldn't help but feel a sense of heartfelt admiration in his heart. Luo Kaiyang bowed slightly to Qin Wentian as he stated, "Although I'm inferior to you, there will definitely be a place for you in the top 9 rankings of the Junlin banquet. Thank you for letting me win." Qin Wentian smiled as he nodded his head. After which, Luo Kaiyang walked down the platform. The victor of this battle was Qin Wentian. Seeing Luo Kaiyang walking down the platform, Qin Wentian's countenance was as calm as still water. Subconsciously, he cast a glance at Lin Yu who was in front of him. At this moment, Lin Yu's heart was pounding rapidly. Staring at the smiling youth, she suddenly felt a sense of inferiority. She bowed slightly to Qin Wentian from afar, "I'm sorry for what happened in the past." Qin Wentian smiled as he nodded his head. Although the words spoken by Lin Yu were somewhat unpleasant to the ears, it was merely the willfulness of youth. It wasn't worth it to hold a grudge in his heart. Seems like this young lady once had a conflict with Qin Wentian. The spectators sighed in their hearts when they saw this scene. Not bad. In the direction of the Emperor's Star Academy, Mustang smiled as he nodded his head. The more he looked at this disciple, the more satisfied he was with him. Qin Wendian walked down the platform. However, at this moment, the spectators already saw him as one of the strongest contenders for the top 9 rankings of the Junlin banquet. Luo Kaiyang's strength could already be considered not bad. However, when facing against Qin Wendian, he had no way to retaliate at all. Not only that, the spectators still couldn't see through Qin Wendian's true combat prowess. In these two battles, the spectators could only see his talent for combat. It was as though it was an innate ability, and his grasp of opportunities and control of the battle was extremely perfect. Although those two battles appeared to be extremely simple, Qin Wendian himself seemed to have the talent to turn complexity into simplicity. The following battles were as fascinating as ever. Occasionally, there would be intense collisions. However, after that, Qin Wendian didn't encounter any opponents that were too strong. Relying on his astral warhammer and his tyrannical movement techniques, he was able to completely suppress his opponents. Time slowly flowed by, and the battles on the 9 towering platforms gradually intensified. The judges on each of the platforms seemed to have intentionally left the most intense battles to the end. Even for the 18 most favored contenders, they were facing extremely difficult challenges. Although other than Jiang Xiu, none of the other contenders were eliminated, it wasn't so easy for them to obtain victory. Only Luo Qianqiu, Xikong Mingyue, Second Sword, Third Knight, and the rest were able to suppress their opponents with arrogance. The winter sun shifted from the east to the west, its warmth still enveloped the land. At this moment, the battles on 3 of the towering platforms had already ended. As for the other 6 towering platforms, only a few people remained. Not only that, the judges directly allowed the remaining contenders to ascend the platforms together. It seemed that the first round of the Junlin banquet would soon conclude. 8th towering platform, 6th Knight, Luo Huan, Yi Ji, Yu Fei, come up together. At this moment, the judge of the 8th towering platform spoke. There were only 4 contenders left on this platform. 6th Knight and Yi Ji, ranked 7th of the 10 prodigies, were 2 of the most favored contenders. Luo Huan and Yu Fei also had payout rates from Heaven's Wonder, but the payout rate for them to enter the top 9 was extremely high. Evidently, Heaven's Wonder didn't think highly of them. If there were no accidents, the next round would be 6th Knight and Yi Ji fighting against Luo Huan and Yu Fei respectively. Not only that, both Luo Huan and Yu Fei were students of the Emperor's Star Academy. 9th towering platform, 7th Knight, Qin Wendian, Luo Cheng, come up. The judge of the 9th towering platform slowly spoke. There were only 3 contenders left on the 9th platform. Because there were 6 contenders in the first round, they had all defeated their opponents, resulting in such a situation. In that case, between 7th Knight, Qin Wendian, and Luo Cheng, one of them had to be eliminated. Although 7th Knight is a female, her combat prowess is extremely high. She should be able to advance to the next round. Luo Cheng's saber light is extremely sharp and ruthless, his combat prowess shouldn't be any weaker than Jiang Xiu. If the judge allows him to fight against Qin Wendian, he should have a 30% chance of victory. Many mused in their hearts. They felt that Qin Wendian had a higher chance of advancing to the next round, but it wouldn't be so easy for him to deal with the crazy Luo Cheng. Everyone had seen those duels time and time again. Luo Cheng's performance was naturally seen by them too. 8th towering platform, 6th Knight against Yu Fei and Yi Ji against Luo Huan. The platform is large enough, let's fight them at the same time. The judge of the 8th towering platform spoke, his words causing the eyes of the spectators to gleam with sharpness. 2 exciting battles were going to proceed at the same time. Indeed, as expected, the judge allowed the 6th Knight and Yi Ji to fight against Yu Fei and Luo Huan respectively. 6th Knight against Yu Fei was a battle between males. Yi Ji against Luo Huan, 2 beauties, caused the spectators to be filled with anticipation. 9th towering platform, the 3 of you will fight at the same time. Whoever gets off the platform first will be eliminated. A voice abruptly rang out, causing expressions of interest to appear on the faces of the spectators. This judge was truly daring. He actually allowed Qin Wentian, Luo Cheng, and Seventh Knight to engage in a chaotic battle. What if two of them decided to work together to deal with the other one? This judge was truly capricious. Maybe, he didn't want anyone to advance to the next round because of a bye, which was why he came up with this idea. Chapter 122. Seventh Night, Qin Wentian and Luo Cheng formed a triangular formation as they stood on the ninth towering platform. Seventh Night was a young lady with beautiful features. She had a smile on her face, and there was no need to doubt her strength since she was able to become one of the 7 Knights of Snowcloud at such a young age. The twin prides, 3 swords and 7 knights were like the 10 prodigies of Snowcloud, except that Snowcloud had a more specific classification. The talent of the twin prides was the highest, the 3 swords were all sword arts geniuses, and 7 knights each had their own unique points. The two of you can't bully weak girls. Seven Knight cast a glance at Qin Wentian and Luo Cheng, as a smile appeared on her face. It was as though people couldn't bear to make a move against her, and it was easy to be deceived by her smile during combat. One of you can step down. Luo Cheng calmly stated, causing Seventh Knight to be startled. After which, she laughed, since you are so confident, why don't the two of you fight it out and eliminate one of you? Luo Cheng's countenance didn't change, but the aura exuding from his body turned violent and sharp. The aura of the 8th level of arterial circulation gushed forth, and it was still rising. 9th level of arterial circulation. Luo Cheng's aura directly broke through the restrictions of the 8th level of arterial circulation, stepping into the 9th level. Before this, he had been concealing his cultivation base, suppressing it to the 8th level. But even so, he still managed to advance all the way to this stage. On the platform, only he, Seventh Knight and Qin Wentian remained. No wonder Luo Cheng is so confident. When he was at the 8th level of arterial circulation, he relied on his ruthlessness and rich combat experience to have the ability to fight against those of a higher level. Now that he's at the 9th level of arterial circulation, his combat prowess would definitely rise to another level, and he would definitely be stronger than Jiang Xiu of the 10 prodigies. The spectators all speculated. If that was the case, it wouldn't be so strange for Luo Cheng to say that Seventh Knight would fight against Qin Wentian, eliminating one of them. Seeing Luo Cheng's cultivation base, Seventh Knight stuck out her tongue. After which, she turned to Qin Wentian and smiled, he wants us to fight, what do you think? If you want my opinion, of course, I hope that the two of you will fight each other and eliminate one of you. Qin Wentian replied with a smile, causing Seventh Knight to reveal a bitter look on her face. You two big men, aren't you ashamed to ask me to fight? Luo Cheng and Qin Wentian didn't say anything. It seemed that they were both waiting. Alright, since all of you want me to fight, I'll fight. Seventh Knight seemed a little wronged. She smiled at Qin Wentian and said, I'll fight you first. You have to go easy on me. Qin Wentian smiled but didn't say anything. On the stage of the Junlin banquet, he didn't believe in such a smile. Seventh Knight lifted her feet and slowly walked towards Qin Wentian, not releasing her astral souls. Although she had experienced many battles, Seventh Knight had yet to meet someone who could pose a threat to her. Every time she encountered an intense battle, she would always be able to defeat her opponent in the end. Those who could reach this stage of the Junlin banquet couldn't be underestimated. Not to mention that Seventh Knight was one of the 7 Knights of Snowcloud. And at this moment, Qin Wentian only felt an illusion appearing in front of him. In his vision, the silhouette of Seventh Knight seemed to have blurred as several Seventh Knights appeared in front of him. The instant this illusion appeared, Qin Wentian felt a sense of danger. Was this the ability that Seventh Knight's astral soul had bestowed upon her? Qin Wentian had tried many times to infuse the power of his astral soul into his innate techniques. How could he not understand what he was facing at this moment? He directly closed his eyes, not bothering to look at the gaze of Seventh Knight. Seventh Knight blasted out with her palm. Instantly, it was as though an ice python was about to devour Qin Wentian, its speed as fast as lightning. Qin Wentian's footsteps trembled as he executed the Garuda movement technique, dodging to the side. Seventh Night followed closely behind Qin Wentian. An intense chill emanated from her, causing Qin Wentian to involuntarily shiver. It was extremely cold. The temperature of the surrounding air plummeted rapidly. Ice spears abruptly pierced through the air, enveloping the entire space in front of them. Each and every ice spear was filled with an aura of sharpness. The whistling sound of the wind seemed to be a testament to the power of their attacks. Seventh Night knew that Qin Wentian was proficient in grasping opportunities. Hence, the moment she made her move, she firmly grasped the initiative and launched a ferocious attack towards Qin Wentian. Qin Wentian's body was already covered with a layer of frost. In the two battles he had won against Jiang Xiu and Luo Kaiyang, he had firmly grasped the initiative, not giving his opponents any chance to retaliate. However, the woman he was currently fighting against was far more intelligent than what he had imagined. Behind that adorable smile of hers, was a deep scheming heart. The divine energy in his arterial circulation pathways seethed. Qin Wentian abruptly halted his steps as he stomped fiercely on the ground. With a roar of rage, the third stance of the Thousand Hands imprint, the Forgotten imprint, blasted out. A terrifying palm imprint roared as the ice spears collided with the palm imprint. Both of them crumbled at the same time. However, Seventh Night's actions didn't stop. Her eyes were filled with a smile as she stared at Qin Wentian. At the same time, she stretched out her palms, as numerous ice pythons coiled around each other as they flew towards Qin Wentian. At this moment, Qin Wentian's eyes abruptly opened as a terrifying aura gushed forth. In that instant, Seventh Night felt as though she had sunk into a dreamscape, causing her mental state to be stimulated. The revolving sea imprint continuously erupted forth from Qin Wentian's palms. The terrifying aura caused Seventh Night's body to flutter backwards, giving up on the idea of continuing the battle. Moments later, she returned to her original position. "Awesome, I'm not playing with you anymore," Seventh Night laughed, as she turned her gaze towards Luo Cheng. "Oi, I've already exchanged blows with him. Don't you want to try as well to be fair?" Seventh Night shouted. "This Seventh Night is truly interesting." The crowd laughed. The feeling that Seventh Night gave them wasn't that of a peerless genius. Instead, she seemed more like an ignorant and lively young girl. Luo Cheng turned his gaze over, as his eyes landed on Qin Wentian. After which, he started walking towards Qin Wentian, as the astral light curved blade appeared in his hands. His body lunged forward, yet the blade in his hands didn't move at all. He didn't unleash any innate techniques, and was still tightly gripping onto it. The distance between him and Qin Wentian grew closer and closer. As the saying goes, taking the initiative to gain the initiative. However, both Luo Cheng and Qin Wentian seemed to be using silence to counter attacks. At this moment, both of them didn't unleash any innate techniques, but this also meant that they could change their moves as they pleased. Seeing that Qin Wentian still didn't move, Luo Cheng's brows twitched as his eyes turned as sharp as the edge of a blade. His blade finally blossomed. However, it wasn't a direct slash, but a slash from the bottom upwards. This was an extremely difficult path to dodge, and if Qin Wentian wanted to evade, he had to twist his body. Bzzz, a raging wind gusted by, only to see Qin Wentian's body rising from the ground as he stepped into the air. At the same time, the energy gathered in his palms instantly gushed forth. With his perfect astral meridians, the speed of his attacks was incomparably fast. Soaring through the air. The countenances of the crowd froze. Behind Qin Wentian, there seemed to be an illusory pair of Garuda wings. This fellow must have condensed the Garuda imprint, and most probably, he had killed many demonic beasts before. Luo Cheng's countenance changed. The edge of his blade blossomed in the air as he violently slashed out. With a thunderous boom, his body was forced back a few steps. Boom! Behind him, a palm imprint directly slammed into Luo Cheng's body. Instantly, Luo Cheng's body was covered in a layer of ice. His countenance paled as an expression of unwillingness flickered in his eyes. "Sorry, do you want to admit defeat?" Seventh Knight giggled. Luo Cheng's entire body was shivering from the cold. Qin Wentian stood in front of him, calmly looking at him, not taking the opportunity to act. Luo Cheng naturally knew that whether he wanted to admit defeat or not, it was no longer up to him. "I admit defeat." Luo Cheng spoke. Only then did Seventh Knight release him. She moved her palm away, allowing Luo Cheng to regain his mobility. Turning his head, he stared at Seventh Knight as he spoke, "No matter what, you are from Snowcloud. Is there any meaning to using such a method to win?" "Of course there is. This way, I can advance to the next round and fight against even stronger opponents." "How could there be no meaning to it?" Seventh Knight giggled, causing Luo Cheng to be speechless. Filled with unwillingness, Luo Cheng walked down the platform. From now on, the two who advanced to the next round were Qin Wentian and Seventh Knight. "Oi, in the next round, let's see who's the real deal." Seventh Knight giggled as she stared at Qin Wentian. Qin Wentian's lips curled up in a smile as he nodded, "I'll be waiting for you." "Okay." Seventh Knight laughed as she shifted her gaze onto the eighth platform. At this moment, the battle between Sixth Knight and Yu Fei was the victor. The battle between Luo Huan and Yi Ji was unexpected. Luo Huan was the victor. Those from the Emperor's Star Academy are truly not to be trifled with. It's such a pity that Luo Cheng lost. The battle between Yu Fei and Sixth Knight was extremely intense. Luo Huan actually concealed her true strength and defeated Yi Ji, ranked 7th of the 10 prodigies. The spectators sighed in their hearts. The battle between Luo Huan and Yi Ji earlier had caused many to be stunned. As the 7th of the 10 prodigies, Yi Ji's strength naturally wasn't weak. In fact, she had also unleashed an extremely tyrannical strength, but she was still defeated. The reason for her defeat was naturally clear to the spectators. Luo Huan's dual astral souls weren't simple at all. And now, on the 9 platforms of the Junlin banquet, the 18 participants had all appeared. The majority of the participants were the same as what the spectators had predicted. However, there were still 3 dark horses. Qin Wentian defeated Jiang Xiu. Luo Huan defeated Yi Ji. Gu Xing, a cold-looking youth, appeared on the 6th platform. He defeated 5th Knight. And now, the 18 participants were, 11 from Chu, Luo Qianqiu, Orkan, Qin Wentian and Luo Huan from the Emperor's Star Academy, Ho Tai and Lenya from the Godly General Martial Palace, Shi Jun and Chu Chen from the Royal Academy, Jiang Feng from the Divine Wind Academy, Kuang Shen from the Mad Blade Sect, and Gu Xing from an unknown origin. 7 from Snowcloud, Sikong Mingyue from the Duo Prides, 2nd Sword, 3rd Knight, 4th Knight, 6th Knight and 7th Knight. The participants from Snowcloud were all elites. Although they didn't bring many people with them, almost all of them had passed the second round. Next, among these 18 participants, half of them would be eliminated, leaving only 9 behind. These 9 participants would be the top 9 of the Junlin banquet and would be rewarded accordingly. At this moment, the drunken Wonderin had already reshuffled the cards and revealed the payout rates for the top 9 participants. Luo Qianqiu and Sikong Mingyue didn't appear on the list of bets. This meant that the 2 of them would definitely be ranked within the top 9. Qin Wentian's name had also appeared on the list. The payout rate for Qin Wentian being ranked within the top 9 was 1-4. Although the payout rate seemed very low, it was evident that Heaven's Wonder didn't believe in Qin Wentian. If not, 9 out of the 18 participants would pass the 3rd round. The payout rate was 1-4. Evidently, Heaven's Wonder wasn't optimistic about Qin Wentian's chances. After all, the participants in this round were all elites, and Luo Qianqiu and Sikong Mingyue had already secured 2 of the top 9 spots. Not only that, Orkan, 2nd Sword, 3rd Knight and the 6th prodigy Jiang Feng would also obtain 5 spots if there were no accidents. Hence, the competition for the other participants would definitely be extremely intense. As for the payout rate for the top 9 spots, the payout rate for Qin Wentian was so high that it was terrifying. 1,400. If you bet a single astral meteor stone and Qin Wentian obtained the top position, you would receive 400 yuan meteor stones from Heaven's Wonder. Evidently, Heaven's Wonder didn't view Qin Wentian as one of the top contenders. Chapter 123. In the Chu Emperor district, the sky had already darkened. Seated on the azure jadeite dragon seat, Chu Tianjiao glanced at the sky as he spoke. It's getting late, let's end the banquet here. I'm sure the Junlin banquet tomorrow will be even more spectacular. After speaking, Chu Tianjiao stood up. Although he wasn't old, he appeared to be extremely mature. Those from the royal clan grew up in the midst of scheming, and were naturally more mature compared to their peers. As the sound of Chu Tianjiao's voice faded, the representatives from the various powers all stood up and toasted Chu Tianjiao. After a toast, Chu Tianjiao left the banquet table, laughing and chatting with those beside him. Qin Wentian gazed at the departing Chu Tianjiao. He could faintly sense that when Chu Tianjiao walked, he was actually half a step behind the person beside Luo Qianqiu. Ordinary people wouldn't be able to notice this change, but because Qin Wentian knew who the person beside Luo Qianqiu was, he paid extra attention to it. The 9 mystical palace was the supreme power behind Chu, Snowcloud, and the other 10 countries. Even if only a few of them came to Chu, their statuses would be comparable to the future emperor of Chu. Chu Tianjiao didn't dare to offend them. Qin Wentian naturally understood why the 9 mystical palace had such great influence. A sect that was above the royal clan, and even the empires. There was no other reason than strength. The higher Wu Xiu ascended, the more terrifying his strength would be, and the greater the disparity between him and those below him. Hence, there were many Yuanfu cultivators in Chu, and countless arterial circulation cultivators. However, the great hurdle of Yuanfu was exceedingly rare. As for those who had the ability to step into Heavenly Dipper, they had already left Chu. Chu was too small, and couldn't accommodate them. Hence, they either joined the 9 mystical palace, or joined other powers similar to the 9 mystical palace. What are you thinking about? Unknowingly, Mu Rou appeared beside Qin Wentian. Noticing Qin Wentian's gaze, she couldn't help but smile. Nothing. It seems that you are in a good mood. Qin Wentian revealed a warm smile when he saw Mu Rou. I still have to thank you. Only now did I know that Senior Ram was an extraordinary character. Many years ago, he was the champion of the Junlin banquet, and now, he has extremely high achievements in the Tao of Divine Inscriptions. Because of that painting of yours, I received a promise from Senior Ram, which helped me greatly. Mu Rou gently spoke. She didn't explain too clearly, but Qin Wentian could already guess what she meant. It's just a gift for your birthday. Don't take it to heart, or else it would mean that you don't treat me as a friend. Qin Wentian intentionally spoke, causing Mu Rou's eyelashes to flutter, adding to her beauty. This fellow seemed to be able to cause people to feel a faint warmth in their hearts. What about my birthday? Are you going to give me a present too? At this moment, a mischievous voice drifted over. Qin Wentian turned his head and saw the silhouette of Mo Qingcheng. The beautiful girl had a faint smile on her face, and it was as if a ray of sunshine had been imprinted in people's hearts. What do you want? Qin Wentian laughed. I have to think about it carefully. I can't waste a gift from a 3rd-level divine inscriptionist. Mo Qingcheng pretended to be deep in thought, appearing extremely adorable. The spectators who had yet to disperse were all envious of Qin Wentian. This fellow was truly lucky with women, surrounded by beauties. Luo Huan, Qin Yao, and Mu Rou were all extremely beautiful. In addition to the number 1 beauty of Chu, Mo Qingcheng, Qin Wentian's treatment was truly something to be jealous of. Don't make things too difficult for me. Qin Wentian shrugged as he stared at the expression on Mo Qingcheng's face. Don't worry, just remember this. Mo Qingcheng laughed. Work hard tomorrow, I'm very optimistic about your performance. After speaking, Mo Qingqing smiled and departed. Mu Rou, who was at the side, stared at her departing back as a strange feeling surfaced in her heart. Being together with Mo Qingqing, even if she had a pretty face, she would still be overshadowed by Mo Qingqing. In the spectator stands, Autumn Snow gazed at the young man in the distance, her countenance extremely complicated. The young man who was once engaged to her was despised and abandoned by her. Now, there seemed to be no lack of beauties who were more outstanding than her by his side. Based on his talent and strength, the distance between them would only grow further and further in the future. That night outside the Bai residence, the resolute voice of the young man was still the same. Those casual words of his were gradually becoming reality. Autumn Snow, let's go. Bai Qingsong, who was at the side, spoke. Autumn Snow nodded her head lightly as she left together with her father. Many of the spectators dispersed, preparing to find a place to rest for the night. However, there were still many who didn't leave, intending to stay the night and wait for the commencement of the Junlin banquet the next day. Boss, do you want to go shopping together? Fan Lu narrowed his eyes as he stared at Qin Wentian. Heaven's Wonder has set a payout rate of 1/400. Why don't you go and bet a few yuan meteor stones? Although the chances are slim, what if your luck is really heaven-defying? Such a high payout rate? Qin Wentian was startled. From the start, Heaven's Wonder simply didn't think highly of him. However, it was understandable. With Luo Qianqiu, Xikong Mingyue and the other experts present, it would be extremely difficult for him to kill his way to the top of the Junlin banquet. Today, standing on the stage of the Junlin banquet, Qin Wentian didn't dare to say that he would definitely be able to become the top ranker. They are looking down on you. Fatty shrugged his shoulders, as though he was intentionally trying to provoke Qin Wentian. Qin Wentian stared at Fan Lu as he stated, "Go and play by yourself, I'm preparing to consolidate my cultivation." After which, Qin Wentian bade farewell to the surrounding spectators before riding on Little Rascal's back and departing the area, akin to a white whirlwind. Royal Capital, Bamboo Lodge. At this moment, a white-haired silhouette was currently sitting by the riverbank, angling for fish. The sound of the flowing water caused people to feel a sense of tranquility. "Why are you so free to come here?" the old man asked in a low voice. He already knew that Qin Wentian had arrived behind him. "The Junlin banquet has just ended, so I came here to see if Senior is doing well." Qin Wentian sat down beside Gong Hong. It had already been a long time since Gong Hong's hair had turned white overnight. Qin Wentian was still somewhat worried. After all, Gong Hong's condition that day was extremely poor. "You are truly considerate." A smile appeared in Gong Hong's cloudy eyes. Compared to the time when Qin Wentian met him in the Royal Academy, the current him looked much older. The Junlin banquet is the grandest event in Chu. You should focus on your cultivation. If you can obtain the top 9 rankings, you would be able to obtain rewards. And if you can obtain the first position, you would be able to step into the 7th level of the Heavenly Star Pavilion. Gong Hong calmly replied. Although it had been a long time since he paid attention to such matters, he had grown up in the royal capital of Chu during his youth. Naturally, he knew many things. For a night's time, I can cultivate here at Senior's place. Qin Wentian smiled. Previously, Senior warned me that if there's a girl I like, I must not miss her. I'm thinking that Senior must have some regrets in the past. Since you have regrets, why don't you try to make up for it? Make up for it? How can I make up for it? Gong Hong shook his head. Without trying, how would Senior know? Even if I can't make up for it, why don't I try? This doesn't seem to match Senior's warning. Didn't Senior tell me not to miss out on the opportunity to make up for it? Qin Wentian smiled as he spoke. Gong Hong slowly turned his gaze over. Staring at the radiant smile on the young man's face, his heart involuntarily trembled. Once upon a time, he was also like Qin Wentian, a graceful youth. But now, he was no different from a dead man. Time was truly the cruelest existence in the world. Qin Wentian turned his gaze over, as a radiant smile appeared on his face. He spoke to Gong Hong. I'm sure Senior must be thinking that if he could return to the time when he was young, he wouldn't have wasted his life. But in reality, for cultivators, as long as one's cultivation base is strong enough, they would be able to return to their youth. Given Senior's current age, you can't be considered old at all. If you are lamenting about the time you missed out on, would you be lamenting about the time you missed out on today? As Qin Wentian spoke, he stared at the towering mountain peak in front of him as he continued in a low voice. How many people regret the time they lost? But how many people truly want to change? If they want to change, why not seize the present? The past has already passed, the future is too far away. Only focus on the present. The past has passed, the future is too far away. Only focus on the present. Qin Wentian's words caused huge waves to surge in Gong Hong's heart. How could a young man say such words? There was a moment of silence, and only the sound of flowing water could be heard. It was exceptionally peaceful. Ultimately, I'm still inferior to a young man. Gong Hong sighed, as he stood up and slowly walked towards the direction of his hut. It was as though an intense struggle was taking place in his heart. What he missed out on, could he still make up for it today? Qin Wentian didn't follow him. The knot in Gong Hong's heart still needed to be unraveled by himself. He only felt that Gong Hong's powerful cultivation base was something that countless people would be envious of. Why couldn't he cherish what he had now, and do what he wanted to do to make up for his regrets? Even if he failed, he had tried his best. Retrieving a few yuan meteor stones from his interspatial ring, Qin Wentian closed his eyes as he sat there and began his cultivation, instantly entering the dreamscape. Astral light revolved around his body, and as the night grew darker, the stars in the night sky were as bright as ever. Rays of light cascaded down onto the body of the young man, flowing through the river. Far away, on the roof of the hut, Gong Hong sat there, basking in the starlight as he stared at the young man by the river. A quiet smile could be seen on his face. This young man was even more outstanding compared to him in the past. How could he not like such a young man? I'll leave after the Junlin banquet. Let's see if you are able to dominate the world today. Gong Hong smiled as he spoke. It was as though a ray of light shone in his heart. At this moment, he seemed to have let go of his burdens, and his entire person felt relaxed. Chapter 124. Qin Wentian cultivated for a night in the bamboo house, and left early the next morning. The second round of the Junlin banquet would be held today, and before the sun had even risen, the Chu Emperor district was already filled with countless silhouettes. Not far away from the Chu Emperor district, in the Drunken Wonder branch of Heaven's Wonder, there were also many silhouettes gathered there. In the center of the Drunken Wonder's great hall, there was a gigantic dragon-shaped jade table that exuded an air of nobility. Although it was somewhat unsophisticated, this was still a casino. There were 18 positions on the dragon-shaped jade table, and each position had a name inscribed on it. These were the names of the 18 participants that had advanced to the second round of the Junlin banquet. Next to the names were the odds for these people to advance to the next round's top 9, top 3, and first place respectively. All three odds were clearly written. The payout rate for Luo Qianqiu to become the champion is actually 1-2. Such a low payout rate shows how highly Heaven's Wonder regards Luo Qianqiu. I wonder why Heaven's Wonder has so much faith in Luo Qianqiu. Some people silently speculated, but there were still many who bet on Luo Qianqiu to become the champion. Although the payout rate was low, it still showed that the probability of Luo Qianqiu becoming the champion was very high. However, there were some who thought differently. They felt that Heaven's Wonder might have intentionally set such a low payout rate to mislead the crowd. Many people would bet on Luo Qianqiu, and if he didn't obtain first place, the biggest winner would naturally be Heaven's Wonder. At this moment, beside the dragon-shaped jade table, there were two elegant young masters. One of them was holding onto a wine gourd, and it was clear that the wine was extremely good. The people around him weren't that crowded, and no one was too close to him. This was a formless form of respect, because the identity of this person was extraordinary. He was the third-ranked prodigy of the royal capital, Immortal Drunken Wine. The payout rate for this fellow is truly tragic. Immortal Drunken Wine lowered his head, as a smile appeared on his face as he stared at Qin Wentian's name. The payout rate for Qin Wentian becoming one of the top 9 rankings was 1-4, the payout rate for him becoming one of the top 3 rankings was 100, and the payout rate for him becoming the champion of the Junlin banquet was even more ridiculously high, 400. Do you think we should place a bet? The youth beside Immortal Drunken Wine laughed. Which one? Top 9, top 3, or the champion? Immortal Drunken Wine asked with a smile as he drank a mouthful of wine. The conversation between the two of them aroused the interest of the people around them. There was actually someone who wanted to bet on Qin Wentian to be the champion and the top 3. Was he crazy? There was still hope for the top 9, and there were quite a few people betting on them. However, the top and top 3 would probably be a waste. What do you think? The young man said with a smile. I don't know. You should know that I can't even afford to drink alcohol now. As for the remaining 2 yuan meteor stones, I'll just casually bet on the champion. Immortal Drunken Wine took out 2 second heavenly layer yuan meteor stones and placed them beside Qin Wentian's name. His actions caused many in the crowd to laugh. Immortal Drunken Wine, why don't you use these 2 yuan meteor stones to buy some wine? It should be enough for you to drink for a few months. Someone jeered, not paying much attention to Immortal Drunken Wine. However, someone from Drunken Wonder walked over and recorded Immortal Drunken Wine's bet. At the same time, he gave Immortal Drunken Wine a proof of his bet. If he won, he would be able to use the proof to claim the yuan meteor stones from Heaven's Wonder. Fine, let's do it this way then. For the champion, I'll bet 100 second heavenly layer yuan meteor stones. For the top 3, I'll bet 100 second heavenly layer yuan meteor stones. It's the same for the top 9 as well. The youth beside Immortal Drunken Wine laughed, causing the surrounding crowd to quieten down. 300 second heavenly layer yuan meteor stones were all placed on Qin Wentian, 100 for each spot. Aren't you afraid of losing everything? Immortal Drunken Wine laughed. Why don't you think so? As long as he gets into the top 9, according to the 1-4 payout rate, I will earn a total of 100. If he gets into the top 3, I will earn 10,100. If he gets into the top 3, I will earn 10,100. If he wins, I will earn. The youth laughed, causing the hearts of the crowd to tremble. Although it sounded wonderful, when one thought about it, it wasn't the case. It was precisely because the possibility of Qin Wentian obtaining the top 3 was too low that the payout rate was so high. In this world, there was no such thing as a free lunch. These 300 yuan meteor stones would most likely be wasted. However, what was the status of this youth? How could he be so generous? If you win, Heaven's Wonder would definitely cry. Immortal Drunken Wine laughed, while the youth beside him was already communicating with the people from Drunken Wonder. Very quickly, someone delivered the proof of his bet. Evidently, this youth wasn't joking. Immortal Drunken Wine, this friend of yours is really funny. At this moment, a voice drifted over. Immortal Drunken Wine glanced over, only to see Chiu Mo. Everyone has their own ambitions. This is my friend's hobby, there's no need for you to worry. Immortal Drunken Wine replied in a carefree manner. Your friend's hobby is indeed unique. Chiu Mo laughed. I'm afraid these 300 yuan meteor stones are going to be thrown away. Immortal Drunken Wine laughed, not intending to argue with Chiu Mo. However, at this moment, a fatty squeezed through the crowd, with over 10 yuan meteor stones in his hands. With a fierce look in his eyes, he placed the yuan meteor stones in the top 3 and top 9 positions respectively. Fatty, I remember that you only bet 5 yuan meteor stones yesterday. This time around, you only bet 10 yuan meteor stones, yet you still dare to shout so loudly. A person laughed, and upon seeing the shameless expression on the fatty's face, the crowd couldn't help but laugh. The fatty was naturally none other than Fan Luo. His lips curled into a grin, as though he didn't mind it at all. Earning Yuan meteor stones was the most important thing. He could only hope that that bastard Qin Wentian would put in more effort and kill his way into the top 3. Fan Luo, you should just take those Yuan meteor stones back and focus on your cultivation. Qiu Mo mocked. Fatty inclined his head, as he grinned at Qiu Mo. I know you are jealous of Qin Wentian. Back then, you made use of Jiang Xiu to deal with Qin Wentian, and in the end, Jiang Xiu's arm was severed by Qin Wentian during the Junlin banquet. However, your skin is still as thick as ever, and you don't seem to have the slightest bit of shame. Do you really want me to tell everyone that you have a crush on Qin Wentian? Upon hearing Fan Li's words, the expressions on the faces of the crowd turned extremely interesting. As for Qiu Mo, his countenance was extremely unsightly to behold. He coldly snorted as he placed some Yuan meteor stones on Luo Qianqiu and Xikong Mingyue, before departing. Let's go, the Junlin banquet is about to begin. At this moment, the people of drunken wonder all departed. Although they were busy placing their bets, they couldn't afford to miss out on the Junlin banquet. In the Chu Emperor district, the people of the royal capital had already prepared a brand new banquet. The participants of the various transcendent powers were all seated at the banquet. Chu Tianjiao's silhouette also appeared on the azure jadeite dragon seat. On the 9 towering platforms, those who had passed the Junlin banquet the previous day were all present. Since the Junlin banquet was only held once a year, they naturally understood the rules. An old man beside Chu Tianjiao gazed at the 9 towering platforms as he spoke. Congratulations to all the participants for advancing to the second round of the Junlin banquet. I'm sure everyone is clear about the rules, so this old man will repeat them once more. For those who are blasted off the platforms, they will be given a chance to return to the platform and challenge another person. If you lose, you will be completely eliminated. If you win, your opponent will be eliminated. Remember, those who return to the platform will only have a single chance to challenge another person. If you succeed, you will be able to remain in the Junlin banquet, but you can only passively accept challenges from others. The loser will be directly eliminated. You can freely choose who you want to challenge. But there's one thing you have to remember. After you defeat your opponent, you are not allowed to challenge that person a second time. These are the rules of the second round of the Junlin banquet. The remaining 9 will be the top 9 of the Junlin banquet and will participate in the ultimate ranking battle. The crowd fell silent. They were all clear about the rules. The second round of the Junlin banquet was even more brutal compared to the first round. For the sake of fairness, those who were defeated by others on the same platform would be given a chance to return to the platform. If not, if Luo Qianqiu or Xikong Mingyue intentionally targeted someone, that person would be too unlucky. Hence, they would be given a chance to return to the platform. Not only that, after returning to the platform and successfully defeating your opponent, the person who defeated you earlier would not be allowed to challenge you again. Naturally, if there were 2 powerful people intentionally targeting the same person, you could only blame it on your bad luck. The probability of this happening was extremely low. Those powerful seated participants would rather stay on the platform and rest. There were 2 participants on each of the 9 platforms. On the 9th platform, Qin Wentian and 7th Knight. At this moment, the spectators were thinking that since the Snow Cloud Country and Chu Country were competing against each other in the Junlin banquet, even if they had some grudges in the past, they wouldn't make a move against someone from the Snow Cloud Country for the sake of glory. After all, this place was the Chu Country. On the 4th platform, Orkan's eyes abruptly shifted as he stared at the 9th platform. His gaze was incomparably sharp as it pierced straight towards Qin Wentian. The hatred he had for Qin Wentian was something that had existed for a very long time. During the Junlin banquet, Qin Wentian had advanced to the second round, and he had the opportunity to fight against Qin Wentian. However, Qin Wentian's current strength was different from the past. He was extremely powerful, and he had defeated Jiang Xiu. Even if he was facing Orkan, he had no choice but to be more cautious. Qin Yao, do you want to sit here? At this moment, at the side of the Chu Emperor's seat, Xiao Lvl suddenly spoke. His gaze was fixed on Qin Yao. No need. Qin Yao's countenance changed, her countenance was extremely unsightly to behold. Xiao Lvl smiled, but he didn't insist. And at this moment, on the first platform, Sikong Mingyue slowly turned his body as he stared at the silhouettes on the platforms behind him. His long robes fluttered in the wind, and his eyes were exceptionally bright. I've long heard that Miss Qin has a brother named Wentian. Being able to meet him today at the Jun Lin banquet can be considered a fortunate event. I wonder which elite of our snow-cloud country is willing to spar against him, allowing me to admire his splendor. Sikong Mingyue's voice was calm as he slowly spoke. As the sound of his voice faded, many in the crowd had expressions of bewilderment on their faces. Although Sikong Mingyue's words were polite and humble, the hidden meaning behind his words wasn't polite at all. In fact, he couldn't even be bothered to personally spar against Qin Wentian. Could it be that the words Xiao Lvl spoke to Qin Yao earlier also had a deeper meaning behind them? Why did Sikong Mingyue suddenly want to deal with Qin Wentian after Xiao Lvl's words? Although he wanted to deal with Qin Wentian, it was evident that Sikong Mingyue wasn't willing to personally act. Or to put it more accurately, he felt disdain for Qin Wentian to act. This was because he was extremely proud in his heart. In the entire Snowcloud country, only he and Xiao Lvl could be called the twin chosen. Naturally, the relationship between Xiao Lvl and Sikong Mingyue was extremely good, as close as brothers. Chapter 125. Qin Wentian abruptly shifted his gaze onto Sikong Mingyue, as a sharp glint of sharpness flickered in his eyes. According to what Mo Qingqing had said, the Crown Prince of Snowcloud Country was no ordinary person. His talent was outstanding, his ambition was great, and his status in Snowcloud Country was extremely high. Sikong Mingyue also stared at him, his eyes as calm as ever. After which, he slowly turned and sat down on the first towering platform, as though all of this had nothing to do with him. And at the same time, on the seventh towering platform, a silhouette abruptly leapt up, akin to a wild goose as he ascended the eighth towering platform. Not only that, he didn't stop there, and continued on his way to the ninth towering platform, standing in front of Qin Wentian. This person was none other than Sixth Knight, a young man with a muscular build. His age shouldn't be young, but his speed was light and graceful. Evidently, his movement technique wasn't bad at all. Interesting, who would have thought that Orkan didn't act, but the first one to act was actually someone from the Snowcloud country. I heard that Xiao Lv. has a lot of prestige in the Snowcloud country, and his relationships with others are extremely good as well. I'm afraid that the relationship between these geniuses from the Snowcloud country wouldn't be bad. As the spectators mused, Sixth Knight had already arrived in front of Qin Wentian. He didn't say a single word, and only stared at Qin Wentian, like a hunter staring at his prey. Qin Wentian stared at his opponent. This person was extremely mature, giving off a sense of steadiness and steadiness. His combat experience should be extremely rich. Rubbing his interspatial ring, an ancient halberd appeared in Qin Wentian's hands. He spoke, I've already destroyed the divine inscriptions within this halberd. It's not a divine weapon, and there's no amplification effect. You can inspect it. An old man soared through the air, landing beside Qin Wentian. After inspecting the halberd, he nodded his head, indeed, it's not a divine weapon. There's no amplification effect, it can be used. This fellow, he actually destroyed the divine inscriptions within a divine weapon. How extravagant, divine inscriptionists are indeed wealthy. Many in the crowd murmured in their hearts. Was Qin Wentian going to use a divine weapon? It seemed like he was also feeling the pressure during the battle for the top 9 rankings. Humph. Sixth Knight coldly laughed. After which, a tyrannical aura erupted forth from him as an astral soul appeared. It was a beast-type astral soul, a gigantic demonic beast with curved horns protruding from its head, resembling an ox god. That tyrannical aura erupted forth as crackling sounds rang out. Sixth Knight's body expanded in size. Big Brother Ox, please be gentler. Seventh Knight giggled from the side. After which, a booming sound rang out, causing the entire platform to tremble. Sixth Knight took a huge step forward, advancing towards Qin Wentian. Dong, dong, dong. The Sixth Knight's aura grew stronger and stronger. It was as if he had turned into a mad bull as he charged towards Qin Wentian. Qin Wentian tightly gripped the ancient halberd in his hands. Just as his opponent's attack was about to reach him, Qin Wentian took a step forward and executed the Azure Dragon stance. The silhouette of an Azure Dragon howled as it smashed forward. Rumble. The shadow of the Azure Dragon exploded, and Sixth Knight instantly entered a berserk state. His palms shot forwards, wanting to grab hold of Qin Wentian's heavenly halberd. Qin Wentian's feet moved as he executed the Garuda movement technique. His speed was incomparably fast, yet his opponent was relentless in his pursuit. How strong is the defense of this type of beast-type astral soul? Qin Wentian laughed as he stomped heavily on the ground. The ancient halberd pierced out once again, emitting a sharp whistling sound as the power contained within it was unknown how terrifying it was. Bzzz. Sixth Knight's body tilted to the side, evading the ancient halberd. His clumsy and gigantic body was actually extremely agile. At the same time, he directly crushed the surging aura of the ancient halberd. Stretching out his left hand, he grabbed hold of the ancient halberd as he continued his charge towards Qin Wentian. The crowd discovered that at this moment, Sixth Knight's entire body was enveloped by a layer of demonic light. His aura was terrifying, and the force of his charge was so great that it could even shatter a mountain. This is Brother Ox's Mad Ox Roar, a mid-tier Earth-grade innate technique. Not only that, it requires one to absorb the essence of a powerful ox-type demonic beast in order to master it. Seventh Knight giggled, as Sixth Knight's terrifying innate technique slammed towards Qin Wentian's body. When Sixth Knight's body neared Qin Wentian, that terrifying aura caused Qin Wentian to feel as though 10,000 horses were galloping towards him, madly slamming into his body. The divine energy within his stellar meridians erupted forth as Qin Wentian's left hand abruptly blasted out. The terrifying falling mountain palms was akin to a true mountain smashing downwards, slamming into Sixth Knight's body. At the instant of impact, the crowd could see a violent flow of air gushing forth. He withstood it. An expression of astonishment appeared on Seventh Knight's face. She was very clear on how ferocious Sixth Knight's attack was. That was definitely a berserk attack. With a cultivation base at the 7th level of arterial circulation, how could Qin Wentian withstand it with just a palm strike? What she didn't know was that Qin Wentian's divine energy was condensed from the 5th heavenly layer of astral energy, and even included some of the 2nd level divine imprints, the mountain divine imprint. This was the reason why his falling mountain palms had such terrifying power, allowing him to forcefully block his opponent's attack. Roar! Sixth Knight howled in rage as he frenziedly dragged Qin Wentian along with him, rushing towards the bottom of the platform, wanting to forcefully knock Qin Wentian off the platform. Let go! Qin Wentian spoke to Sixth Knight. His eyes were filled with a domineering aura, causing Sixth Knight to feel as though he was about to submit. Scram! Sixth Knight howled in rage. Although Qin Wentian did his best to resist, he was still pushed to the edge of the platform by Sixth Knight. Many in the crowd watched on nervously. Could it be that Qin Wentian would be eliminated in the first battle of the second round? Courting death. Qin Wentian roared in rage, causing the crowd to be bewildered. They couldn't understand why Qin Wentian would still be able to spit out such arrogant words. At this moment, the divine energy within Qin Wentian's body was madly converging, condensing into divine inscriptions of the 1st level. Currently, Qin Wentian was able to condense this type of divine inscription within a short period of time. The sword-shaped divine inscriptions converged, transforming into a terrifyingly sharp sword in Qin Wentian's arterial circulation. But at this moment, the spectators didn't know that Sixth Knight was determined to smash Qin Wentian off the platform. Qi. Qin Wendian opened his mouth, and in that instant, a resplendent beam of sword light shot out from his mouth, incomparably sharp. Arg! A scream of agony rang out. Sixth Knight's movements instantly halted. The sharp sword that Qin Wendian had spat out from his mouth had already broken through the protective barrier of his demonic qi, and directly pierced through one of his eyes. Sixth Knight's aura instantly exploded outwards, and the sword light condensed from the divine energy also disappeared. However, the damage done to Sixth Knight had already been determined. Scram! Qin Wendian, who had already reached the edge of the platform, grabbed hold of Mad Bull's body, and directly threw him off the platform. This sudden reversal caused the spectators to be dumbfounded. The gazes they used to look at Qin Wendian grew increasingly strange. Spitting out a sharp sword from his mouth, this fellow actually had such an ability. This was truly unexpected. Orkan's countenance changed slightly. He had personally witnessed Qin Wendian spitting out palm imprints. But now, it seemed as though he was even more proficient in this technique, directly spitting out a sharp sword from his mouth, making it impossible for his opponent to defend against it. In fact, it was the same as when he defeated Jiang Xiu in the first battle. Qin Wendian wasn't proficient in swordsmanship, so where did his swords come from? In the spectator stands, in the direction of the Mo clan, beside Mo Qingcheng, the eyes of her father flickered with sharpness as he spoke in a low voice. This brat's arterial circulation is extremely smooth, but how did he manage to spit out a sharp sword from his mouth? Not only him, the Yuanfu cultivators from the Emperor's Star Academy, as well as the various transcendent powers, were all extremely curious. How did Qin Wendian accomplish this? This kind of ability was extremely rare, and they had never heard of any Yuanfu cultivators possessing it before. Could it be that Qin Wendian had comprehended it himself? If that was the case, his comprehension ability had to be re-evaluated. Compared to the fact that Sixth Knight was blinded, they were more concerned about how Qin Wendian had accomplished this. It wasn't that these people were cold-blooded and emotionless, it was just that in the world of cultivation, the majority of them were already used to death or heavy injuries. On the stage of the Junlin banquet, there would always be geniuses falling, and heavy injuries were extremely common. However, those from Snowcloud didn't think so. Not only was Sixth Knight defeated, his eyes were also blinded. This indicated that he had lost the ability to challenge others. The battle against Qin Wendian at the Junlin banquet would be his final battle. Forget about the challenge, bring him back to the royal palace to recuperate. Chu Tianjiao calmly spoke. A few silhouettes stepped out, carrying the heavily injured Sixth Knight away as they mounted demonic beasts and soared into the skies. After Sixth Knight's defeat, the spectators had to re-evaluate Qin Wendian's strength. To be able to spit out a sharp sword from his mouth, it was absolutely impossible for one to engage in close combat with Qin Wendian. If not, if they were to be suppressed during combat, would they still be able to defend against a sword attack from his mouth? The ending of Sixth Knight was the best proof of this. Out of the 18 participants, only 17 remained. Seems like Qin Wendian's chances of entering the top 9 has increased. Many people were thinking in their hearts, regretting that they didn't bet on Qin Wendian entering the top 9 at the Drunken Wonder Inn. Right now, the payout rate of Drunken Wonder Inn had been adjusted. If they were to bet now, they would have to follow the new payout rate. At this moment, Fatty Fan Lu was extremely agitated. He had bet everything he had. If Qin Wendian was able to charge into the top 9, no, top 3, that would be too wonderful. Sikong Mingyue turned and stared at Qin Wendian, as a sharp glint of light flickered in his eyes. In the first round, the victor and loser have yet to be determined. In that case, let's continue with the unfinished battles. This time around, before Sikong Mingyue could even open his mouth, Qin Wendian had already spoken. After which, he brandished his ancient halberd as he advanced towards the direction of Seventh Knight. The ancient halberd was dragged along the ground, causing an ear-piercing screech to echo out. The aura radiating from Qin Wendian continued to rise unceasingly. At this moment, Qin Wentian gave off a feeling of arrogance and unruliness. As long as he unsheathed his halberd, who could contend against him? This kind of aura seemed to have been engraved into his bones. Inadvertently, when he released his aura, he was akin to a supreme expert. He stood there leisurely, looking down at the world with disdain. At this moment, Seventh Night felt a terrifying pressure gushing towards her. Chapter 126. Seventh Night's beautiful eyes flickered as she sensed Qin Wentian's aura. After which, she smiled at Qin Wentian. "Wentian Gige, do you really have the heart to do this to me?" At this moment, the pitiful look on Seventh Night's face made Qin Wentian feel as though the person he was facing wasn't Seventh Night. "Wentian Gige, only that last Bai Qing would address him in this manner." Ever since the Bai clan moved to the royal capital, Qin Wentian had never seen Bai Qing again. Now that a year had passed, he wondered how she was doing. At this moment, a surge of coldness suddenly appeared. Qin Wentian's countenance flashed like lightning. This was an illusion. Seventh Night possessed the ability to create illusions. His will once again became resolute, his heart as hard as steel, and his gaze as sharp as a spear. An indomitable aura once again appeared as he advanced forward. Seventh Night's soul-stirring eyes were still fixated on Qin Wentian. However, she also felt that her own eyes were about to sink into the illusion. The illusion in the depths of Qin Wentian's eyes was like a dream, causing her to be unable to extricate herself. Qin Wentian similarly unleashed his innate talent through his eyes. Bzzz, the ancient halberd exploded outwards. Qin Wentian's body soared through the air as he descended from the skies, akin to a ferocious tiger rushing down from the mountains, incomparably tyrannical. "Wentian Gige, you are so ruthless." Seventh Night spoke in a meek voice, yet her words were unable to shake Qin Wentian's heart. The ancient halberd instantly descended. Seventh Night had finally started her counterattack. Frost froze the ancient halberd, as numerous ice spears pierced out in rage. Although the ice spears were all shattered, the number of ice spears was simply too many. Qin Wentian's ancient halberd danced about continuously. The azure dragon roared, the white tiger roared, and the vermilion bird swept through the air, shattering all the ice spears in his way. Qin Wentian's attacks continued on his way towards Seventh Night. Seventh Night took a few steps back, but Qin Wentian didn't even give her the chance to breathe. Sixth Night's berserk strength was her strength, while Seventh Night's agility was her control and illusion abilities. In that case, he would use his strength to suppress her. Seventh Night released her astral soul, only to see a gigantic coiling ice python appearing. Its eyes were fixed on Qin Wentian, causing him to feel a sense of demonic terror. At the same time, the seventh palm shook, and a giant frost python rushed out, colliding with his ancient halberd. "Wentian Gige." Seventh Night shouted again. Abruptly, a terrifying astral light radiated from her body. Her body rotated slightly as a pair of golden wings appeared on her back. They were like rows of golden blades slicing towards Qin Wentian. At this moment, they were as fast as lightning, and when they exploded out, it was impossible for anyone to dodge. That's only her second astral soul. Her first astral soul was an ice-attributed python astral soul, and it was bestowed with the power of illusion. The pupils of the spectators narrowed. They had all been deceived by Seventh Night, thinking that her power of illusion was also a type of astral soul. So it turned out that it was a talent bestowed upon her by her ice-attributed python astral soul. Her second astral soul was a pair of wings, incomparably resplendent. When it swept out, it was as sharp as a blade, wanting to sever Qin Wentian's body into two. Qin Wentian's right hand that was holding onto the halberd was frozen by his opponent, while Seventh Night's wings slashed towards his right from an extremely crafty angle. Qin Wentian's hand that was holding onto the halberd relaxed in an instant, as he slammed out with his palm towards the golden rays of light. The rumbling sounds of his palm imprints were akin to a terrifying torrent, while at the same time, he spat out a beam of razor-sharp sword light. This battle caused the spectators to be dazzled, it was too fascinating. Regardless of whether it was Qin Wendian or Seventh Knight, both of their attacks were impossible to defend against. Seventh Knight's body abruptly spun around at a rapid speed, and in that instant, the entire sky was filled with golden astral light. The resplendent wings were as beautiful as the wings of a phoenix. Seventh Knight's graceful figure danced gracefully in the air, and as she spun around, the sword light that landed on her body was instantly destroyed. Only Qin Wendian could feel how dangerous Seventh Knight was at this moment. Her wings were akin to millions of sharp swords slashing towards him, slicing through the air. If he was struck by them, he would die without a doubt. Seventh Knight's strength isn't any weaker than Sixth Knight's. The spectators exclaimed in admiration. As expected of a battle of the Junlin banquet, it was indeed fascinating. Rumble. Within Qin Wendian's arterial pathways, terrifying rumbling sounds rang out. The divine energy condensed from the second-level divine imprint of the mountain divine imprint howled as it flowed through his arterial pathways and into Qin Wendian's palms. Qin Wendian retreated a few steps, before ruthlessly stomping his foot on the ground, causing the entire platform to tremble. After which, Qin Wendian blasted out with his palm. It was still the falling mountain palms, but this palm didn't seem to be a palm, but rather a mountain peak pressing downwards. The spectators felt that Seventh Knight was extremely tiny and insignificant. Seventh Knight's sharpness was too sharp. Since that was the case, he would use force to break it. Boom! It was as though a mountain peak had smashed into Seventh Knight's body. Her dancing silhouette instantly halted, as though her internal organs were shaken by the force of Qin Wendian's palm strike. Get down! Qin Wendian continued forward, slamming his palm onto Seventh Knight's body. In an instant, Seventh Knight's body was flung through the air, directly landing below the platform as she staggered backwards. Her face reddened, and finally, she couldn't endure it any longer as she coughed out a mouthful of blood. After which, she sat down cross-legged as her countenance gradually turned pale. Although her attack earlier was terrifying, her defense wasn't that strong. Qin Wendian's falling mountain palms, which were formed from the divine energy of the mountain divine inscriptions, were extremely ferocious. How could she not be heavily injured? Picking up the ancient halberd, Qin Wendian stood there. His gaze wasn't on Seventh Knight, but on the various towering platforms. A gentle breeze ruffled his robes, as his long hair danced in the wind. His gaze landed on Sikong Mingyue, as though he was silently declaring to him that it wouldn't be so easy for him to get down from the platform. For the next two battles, Qin Wendian appeared. In the first battle, he lost to Sixth Knight. In the second battle, he lost to Seventh Knight. Are there any more challenges? The old man beside Chu Tianjiao asked Seventh Knight. Seventh Knight opened her eyes, as she replied, "Please give me some time, let the others fight first." "Fine, I'll wait for your next battle." The old man nodded his head. Those who lost all had a chance to fight again. Since Seventh Knight was injured and didn't want to give up, he would give her a chance. On the ninth towering platform, only Qin Wendian remained. He sat cross-legged and took out a Yuan meteor stone. Releasing his astral soul, he began to absorb the astral energy within the Yuan meteor stone, before using his astral soul to temper it. He needed the purest form of astral energy. The Yuan meteor stone in his hand was only a meteorite from the second heavenly layer. Only by tempering it with his astral soul would it be able to absorb the astral energy he needed. Seems like that mountain-like palm imprint caused Qin Wendian to expend quite a bit of astral energy. The spectators mused. Qin Wendian took the opportunity to rest to replenish his astral energy. The amount of astral energy that Wu Xiu's body could store was limited. The higher one's cultivation base, the larger the vessel the human body was, and the more astral energy it could store. And the stronger an innate technique was, the more astral energy it would consume. Hence, if one could use a simple innate technique to defeat their opponent, no one would be willing to waste too much astral energy to use their strongest attack. Our Snowcloud country's Qi Yi has actually been defeated twice in a row. Sikong Mingyue calmly stated. The faces of those from Snowcloud couldn't even be seen. Currently, only 5 of them remained on the platform. They were Sikong Mingyue, second sword, third knight and fourth knight. The countenances of these people were solemn. Their gazes once again shifted onto the 9th towering platform. Does the Snowcloud country think they can bully my Chu country? Luo Huan laughed lightly as she slowly walked towards 4th knight. Since 7th knight only had a single battle to rest, she would help Qin Wentian to settle this. 4th knight's countenance was extremely heavy as he stared at Luo Huan. During the first round, he had seen Luo Huan's combat prowess. The flexibility and toughness of this woman's body was terrifying. A long whip appeared in her hands as Luo Huan advanced towards 4th knight. Abruptly, her long whip danced in the air, transforming into a myriad of whip shadows that filled the skies, akin to millions of sharp swords shooting towards 4th knight. 4th knight stepped out, his palms trembled as a ball of azure light appeared around him, enveloping him within. At the same time, he withstood the attacks of the millions of whip shadows as he dashed towards Luo Huan. This defense? The spectators had expressions of astonishment on their faces. Maybe, Luo Huan's attacks were somewhat lacking. Luo Huan similarly dashed towards 4th knight, and the two of them instantly clashed. 4th knight's arm transformed into a saber light as he slashed out. Luo Huan's body twisted, barely dodging the attack. At the same time, her other hand actually landed on 4th knight's shoulder. Boom! 4th knight punched out, as a terrifying fist light directly landed on Luo Huan's body. However, it was as though he had punched nothing but air. Luo Huan's body bent over, resembling a willow tree branch. After which, with a ferocious leap, she coiled around 4th knight's body. Scram! 4th knight's entire body erupted with a terrifying saber intent as he released his astral soul, incomparably violent. Luo Huan's body spun madly, and in an instant, it was unknown how many times she spun. Her speed was even faster than 7th knight's, and in an instant, the spectators discovered that 4th knight's body seemed to have been buried by the vines. The speed at which the saber light sliced through the air was actually slower than the speed at which she spun. Mustang, who was standing on the platform, laughed lightly. Luo Huan's performance didn't surprise him at all. In truth, only a few people knew how powerful Luo Huan's talent was. Usually, she would always smile, but in crucial moments, she would always be able to erupt forth with an astonishing amount of power. 4th knight's entire body seemed to be engulfed by the vines. The saber light gradually grew weaker, and only when the spectators could no longer sense it did Luo Huan finally stop spinning. Her sexy legs were still clamped around 4th knight's head, as the countless vines and willow branches completely buried 4th knight's body. Yet another dark horse. Many people exclaimed in admiration. Luo Huan had actually used her astral soul, which many people didn't think highly of, to unleash such an astonishing amount of power. The combination of the Weeping Willow astral soul and the Long Vine astral soul was actually able to unleash such a terrifying power. Naturally, this wasn't just a simple fusion of astral souls. Luo Huan's strength was also the reason why she could perfectly fuse them together. My sister, why didn't you say so earlier? Fan Le had a bitter expression on his face. He had forgotten to bet on his senior sister Luo Huan. Chapter 127. On the platform, Luo Huan was still tightly controlling 4th knight. The spectators could see that Luo Huan had no intentions of letting go. Staring at her beautiful countenance, they couldn't help but feel a chill in their hearts. Was she trying to take 4th knight's life? For such a long time, 4th knight was probably suffering from suffocating pain. He has already been defeated, why don't you release him? Sikong Mingyue stared at Luo Huan as he coldly spoke. I didn't hear him concede. Luo Huan laughed. If I let him go, he might attack me again. The cold light in Sikong Mingyue's eyes intensified. However, it was true that Luo Huan didn't break the rules. Not only did she control 4th knight, she didn't even give him a chance to speak. It wasn't that fourth knight wasn't strong, it was just that Luo Huan's combat style was too bizarre. The combination of her two astral souls allowed her to possess a body that could be described as perfect and resilient. It was like the whip in her hands, able to twist and turn as she pleased. Fourth knight didn't even have the chance to display his combat power, but he had already fallen into such a desperate situation. It's best to leave some leeway in life, Sikong Mingyue calmly said. Just now, when you were preparing to take turns to fight my junior brother, you didn't seem to have thought of this. Luo Huan continued giggling. Evidently, she couldn't bear to see those from Snowcloud repeatedly acting against Qin Wendian. Hence, she decided to retaliate against the Emperor's Star Academy. Sikong Mingyue was speechless. However, a terrifying killing intent gushed forth from him. Staring at fourth knight who was beneath Luo Huan, he coldly stated, "I will avenge you. I'm not that cruel." Luo Huan laughed. After which, her body slid down the platform as she kicked fourth knight off the platform. After fourth knight was freed, he took a deep breath and fainted. It was obvious that he no longer had the ability to return to the stage. These people are truly ruthless, not even giving the opponent a chance to turn the tables. The crowd silently speculated. Qin Wendian was like this, and so was Luo Huan. Fourth knight had lost the right to return to the stage, but seventh knight still had a chance. Her face was still pale, evidently not enough time to recover from her injuries. "Forget it, have a good rest," Sikong Mingyue said to seventh knight. Seventh knight reluctantly nodded her head and gave up the opportunity to return to challenge. At this moment, the fourth, sixth and seventh knights were all eliminated. Out of the 18 participants, only 15 remained. As for Snowcloud, there were only 4 participants remaining. Such an ending wasn't something the Snowcloud country wanted to see. They had traveled thousands of miles to come to Chu, and even joined forces with Chu to host the Jun Lin banquet. If their results were too bad, wouldn't they lose all face when they returned to Snowcloud? "Everyone, choose your own opponent," Sikong Mingyue calmly said. In an instant, several figures on the stage moved. The second sword arrived in front of Shi Jun. The third knight walked towards Kuang Sheng. As for the third sword, he wanted to move towards Qin Wendian. However, just as he was about to reach Qin Wendian, a silhouette blocked his path. That silhouette was none other than a silent young man, Gu Xing. From the start to the end, this young man hadn't spoken a single word. He was silent, quiet, and just like his name, he was like a lonely star. However, in the first round, he had defeated fifth knight. Nobody dared to underestimate him. At this moment, Gu Xing stood in front of third sword. It was unknown if he was intentionally blocking for Qin Wendian, or if he was just casually doing it. But no matter what his purpose was, at least this time around, the spectators would be able to witness an exciting battle. Sikong Mingyue initially wanted to move, but at this moment, he halted as he stared at the 3 opponents. The Snowcloud country can't wait any longer. The spectators silently mused. The sword chi from second sword gushed forth as a terrifying tempest enveloped his entire body. With a flick of his finger, countless beams of sword light shot towards the 8th prodigy. Shi Jun's body was like a boulder as he punched out with his fist. But in an instant, the boulder was shattered by the sharp sword, causing him to retreat a step. The sword chi from second sword was exceedingly sharp. He had exchanged blows with Jiang Xiu before, and Jiang Xiu's sword intent was far inferior to second sword's. If Jiang Xiu's sword intent was akin to the autumn rain of swords, then second sword's sword intent would be akin to the tempest of swords. At the same time, third knight also started to make his move against Kuang Sheng, ranked number 9 of the 10 prodigies. Third knight had some similarities with sixth knight, they were both proficient in offense and strength. Brandishing his gigantic axe, he directly slashed towards Kuang Sheng. Kuang Sheng was proficient in saber techniques, and he used his tyrannical saber techniques to clash against third knight. However, every time they clashed, the spectators would discover that Kuang Sheng's saber techniques would slow down and he would be forced to retreat. Evidently, he was at a disadvantage in terms of strength. Third Knight was using brute force to break through. Although his axe techniques seem clumsy, they are actually extremely exquisite. Kuang Sheng's saber techniques are being suppressed to the point of death. Shi Jun and Kuang Sheng are both going to be defeated soon. The spectators mused. This time around, the rankings of the top 5 prodigies would all change. Orkan, Luo Huan, Qin Wentian, and even Luo Cheng would all be ranked within the top 10 prodigies. There would always be geniuses in every generation. If one didn't advance, they would have to retreat. This was reality. Third Sword also released his sword-type astral soul at this moment, as the sword intent radiating from him started to rise. However, Gu Xing still stood there, as though he was eternally alone. There were no fluctuations in his eyes, and only when he stared at his opponent would a terrifying cold light erupt forth. This kind of cold light caused the spectators to feel traces of coldness. The sword light was like a shadow. The third sword stabbed out. This was a sword art divine ability that had no flaws. It was as if under his sword light, no other light could exist. All the brilliance belonged to his sword. Puchi. A light sound rang out, causing the spectators to be stunned. Third Sword was stunned as well. His sword had pierced through Gu Xing's left arm. He wanted to seal off Gu Xing's path of retreat, but Gu Xing didn't retreat at all, nor did he evade. He allowed the sword to easily pierce through his body. Third Sword's combat experience was extremely plentiful. However, he had never seen such a situation before. Hence, he was stunned for a moment. At the same time, Gu Xing's hand grabbed hold of the sword that had pierced through his body. His eyes stared straight at Third Sword, and in an instant, Third Sword only felt a piercing pain in his eyes. After which, a palm imprint directly slammed into his head. With a thunderous boom, Third Sword's body was flung through the air, landing below the platform as he screamed in agony. His face was now a bloody mess. This bizarre battle caused the spectators to be dumbfounded, as they fell into a daze. The sword in Gu Xing's left arm had already disappeared. Without the support of astral energy, how could his astral soul take the form of a sword? Gu Xing returned to his original position and sat down cross-legged. There wasn't much blood flowing out from his left arm, and the wound seemed to be healing. What a terrifying recovery ability. What astral soul does he have? The hearts of the spectators trembled as they engraved this lonely silhouette into their minds. His name was Gu Xing, the lonely constellation of stars. At this moment, he had regained his calm. Nobody knew what he was thinking in his heart. Actually, when he defeated Fifth Knight in the first round, many of the major powers in the royal capital had already started to investigate Gu Xing. However, they discovered that it was as though Gu Xing didn't exist in Chu at all. No matter how powerful their intelligence network was, they couldn't find any clues at all. Gu Xing had appeared in the royal capital before the Junlin banquet, but he didn't do anything until he appeared on the platform and defeated Fifth Knight. And now, he had defeated Third Sword. Other than Third Sword being defeated, the other 2 participants from Snowcloud had already defeated their respective opponents. Shi Jun and Kuang Sheng were both defeated, but they still had the ability to challenge their opponents. As for Third Sword, he already had no way of challenging his opponent. Shi Jun and Kuang Sheng once again challenged their opponents, while the others quietly sat there. Shi Jun walked towards Chu Chen, who was also from the Royal Academy. Kuang Sheng seemed to be waiting. When he personally witnessed the little prince Chu Chen defeating Shi Jun, his heart turned even colder. As for the remaining participants, none of them were characters that could be trifled with. Luo Qianqiu, Sikong Mingyue, Second Sword, and Third Knight naturally didn't need to be mentioned. Orkan, Luo Huan, and Gu Xing were all extremely terrifying as well. Ho Tai from the godly General Martial Palace was extremely powerful, and Lenya was also a ruthless character. Kuang Sheng couldn't figure out Lenya's background at all. Lastly, there were the 2 strongest arterial circulation cultivators from the Divine Wind Academy, the 6th prodigy, Jiang Feng, and Qin Wentian. It was simply too difficult to advance to the next round. Even if he won another round, he would still be eliminated in the next round. Finally, Guang Xing steeled his heart and walked towards Qin Wendian. After all, he had seen a few of Qin Wendian's battles. Although Qin Wendian was powerful, he still had a clear understanding of Qin Wendian's background. Not only that, Qin Wendian had expended a large amount of astral energy and was currently busy with his cultivation. When Guang Xing appeared in front of Qin Wendian opened his eyes. Staring at Guang Xing, he slowly stood up. "In the end, it's because I'm too kind," Qin Wendian murmured. He no longer wielded the ancient halberd in his hands. The 7 arterial pathways in his body surged and rumbled, so loud that the spectators could almost hear the sound of it. This scene caused Guang Xing's countenance to stiffen as his countenance grew even heavier. An illusory pair of Garuda wings appeared behind Qin Wendian's back. In the next instant, his silhouette disappeared from his original location as the forgotten imprint blasted out. Guang Xing lifted his saber, as the saber light flashed, shattering the palm imprint. However, Qin Wendian's silhouette flickered as he instantly disappeared, reappearing at the side of Guang Xing as he sent out yet another palm strike. Guang Xing pushed his footwork to the limits, following closely behind Qin Wendian's attack. An instant later, the spectators only saw the silhouette of Qin Wendian, as before, filling the skies with palm imprints. Guang Xing's saber danced about in an impenetrable manner, as a terrifying saber tempest manifested. However, the spectators could tell that if this continued, Guang Xing would be defeated sooner or later. And indeed, not long after, Guang Xing's saber started to become chaotic. Only to see Qin Wendian chopping out with his palm, as Guang Xing slashed out with his saber once more. But at the same time, Qin Wendian spat out a sharp sword, causing Guang Xing's countenance to drastically change. Boom! A terrifying palm imprint slammed into Guang Xing's body, causing him to be flung through the air, landing outside of the platform. After which, he slammed heavily onto the ground as he unceasingly coughed out mouthful after mouthful of blood. It was as though all the meridians in his body had been destroyed. At this moment, Qin Wendian slowly lowered his leg. How could he stop at that? He could only spit out sword light from his mouth. Who said that his leg couldn't be blasted out with palm techniques? At this moment, out of the original 18 contestants, only 12 were left. Only 3 more would be eliminated, and the top 9 would be revealed. However, the hearts of the spectators grew even more nervous. This was especially so for those who had placed their bets. Their hearts were pounding wildly. Chapter 128. At this moment, those who remained on the 9 towering platforms were Snowcloud Country's Sikong Mingyue, Second Sword, Third Knight, Chu Country's Luo Qianqiu, Qin Wendian, Gu Xing, Luo Huan, Orkan, Ho Tai, Lenya, Chu Chen and Jiang Feng. Following that, 3 out of the 12 would have to be eliminated. However, the remaining ones were all extremely difficult to deal with. None of them would be easy to eliminate. Sikong Mingyue and Luo Qianqiu couldn't be touched. The Second Sword and Third Knight were the strongest existences in Snowcloud other than Sikong Mingyue. As for Orkan, Heaven's Wonder had high hopes for him during the Junlin banquet this year. Not only that, he had displayed his talent in the Astral River Hall of the Emperor's Star Academy. Gu Xing was a madman. No one dared to provoke someone who did not care about his life. Luo Huan's perfect fusion of astral souls was unshakable. Qin Wendian was getting stronger and stronger. Ho Tai and Lenya, these 2 people from the godly General Martial Palace gave off a mysterious and powerful feeling. Jiang Feng, the strongest cultivator below Yuan Fu in the Divine Wind Academy. He was ranked number 6 among the 10 prodigies of the royal capital. This also meant that out of the 5 prodigies participating in the Junlin banquet this year, his ranking was the highest. In the past, Prince Chu Chen had never revealed his true strength. However, he had defeated Shi Jun of the 10 prodigies. Furthermore, he did not seem to have exhausted too much of his energy. It was likely that he had not even revealed his trump cards yet. If possible, the crowd didn't want any of the remaining 12 people to be eliminated. Sadly, the Junlin banquet only required a total of 9 names. It was destined that 3 of them would have to leave the 9 towering platforms. At this moment, Sikong Mingyue's gaze shifted over, landing on Luo Huan. Earlier, Luo Huan had dealt with 4th Knight in front of him. Not only that, 4th Knight's consequences were extremely miserable. Now, Luo Huan would have to pay the price. Buzz. A raging wind gusted by, as Sikong Mingyue gently walked forward. However, with every step he took, there seemed to be a formless gust of wind in the air, fluttering his long hair. A terrifying killing intent erupted from Sikong Mingyue's body, as though it was about to transform into a corporeal killing intent, instantly enveloping all 9 towering platforms within it. Qin Wentian's eyes narrowed. The killing intent radiating from Sikong Mingyue's body was extremely terrifying. It was as though anyone who dared to obstruct his path would be completely annihilated. And at this moment, Sikong Mingyue was targeting senior sister Luo Huan. Senior sister, if you can't do it, just admit defeat. Qin Wentian called out to Luo Huan. Luo Huan nodded her head lightly as her countenance turned heavy. The pressure Sikong Mingyue gave her was extremely strong. Sikong Mingyue has finally made his move. The gazes of the crowd were all focused on him, as though the moment he made his move, he would attract everyone's attention. Sikong Mingyue's strength is so tyrannical, yet Heaven's Wonder still views him as the second strongest contender for the position of the champion. Although Heaven's Wonder is already extremely optimistic about him, it's still not as optimistic as it is about Luo Qianqiu. I wonder how strong Luo Qianqiu is exactly, and why Heaven's Wonder regards him so highly. The hearts of the spectators were speculating. Luo Qianqiu wasn't even one of the 10 prodigies last year. Could it be that in just a year's time, he had already made a comeback, directly ascending to the top of the Junlin banquet, overlooking the entire world? Actually, with Heaven's Wonder's terrifying intelligence network, since they wanted to set the payout rates, they naturally had to have a good grasp of everyone's situation. They were very clear about Luo Qianqiu's background, as well as the mission Luo Qianqiu had to carry. Hence, for this year's Junlin banquet, Luo Qianqiu had to obtain the position of champion. Because, he needed to step into the 7th level of the Heavenly Star Pavilion. Hence, Luo Qianqiu couldn't be defeated. At this moment, Qin Wentian felt an immense pressure. With his current combat prowess, he still didn't have the confidence to win against Luo Qianqiu and Sikong Mingyue. He wanted to fight, and he would do his best to fight. A year was too long, he had to seize every minute. However, this wasn't enough just because he had faith. He had to think of a way to defeat both Sikong Mingyue and Luo Qianqiu. On the platform of the final battle, both of them would be blocking his path. Only by surpassing them would he be able to ascend to the top. Sikong Mingyue arrived in front of Luo Huan. His footsteps didn't stop as he advanced towards Luo Huan. At this moment, Luo Huan released both of her astral souls. Even if she couldn't defeat her opponent, she still wanted to see how strong Sikong Mingyue was exactly. She wanted to know more about Sikong Mingyue's background, and what were his trump cards. Only to see Sikong Mingyue directly pointing his finger at Luo Huan. In an instant, a majestic killing intent gushed forth, transforming into the word slaughter, imprinting itself onto Luo Huan with a speed as fast as lightning. Luo Huan's countenance changed. The flexibility of her body was incomparably tyrannical, yet Sikong Mingyue was using a long-range attack to deal with her. Not only that, the might of this attack was extremely terrifying. If the word slaughter were to land on her body, it would definitely be able to penetrate through her body. A long whip appeared in her hands as she unleashed a storm of wind and rain, slamming into the ancient word slaughter. Luo Huan's attack was instantly disintegrated, but the ancient word slaughter continued advancing, its momentum not yet dissipating. Die! Sikong Mingyue stepped forward. He didn't even need to engage in close combat with Luo Huan. Once again, he jabbed out with his finger, and in an instant, the ancient word, slaughter, transformed into a terrifying torrent of slaughter, crazily gushing towards Luo Huan. Luo Huan's body retreated unceasingly. It was extremely difficult for her to defend. Soon, she was already at the edge of the platform, and her defeat was already inevitable. Under Xikong Mingyue's suppression, even with Luo Huan's tyrannical strength, she actually had no way to resist at all. From this, one can see that even though they are at the same cultivation level, the disparity between them can be so great. Xikong Mingyue's attacks most probably contained the power of his astral souls, and in addition to that, his innate technique, grand momentum, and a terrifying slaughter chi were all fused into one. Some of the experts in the crowd silently mused. Xikong Mingyue was too powerful, he seemed to be on a completely different level compared to the others. No wonder Heaven's Wonder ranked him as the second strongest contender for the position of the top ranker. One of the duo prides of Snowcloud, his reputation was well deserved. Seeing that Luo Huan had yet to be defeated, an intense killing intent flashed in Xikong Mingyue's eyes. With a step, his entire person vanished from sight, together with the torrent of slaughter, rushing towards Luo Huan. Upon seeing this scene, many in the crowd couldn't help but feel nervous. Countless vines abruptly appeared, wanting to wrap around Xikong Mingyue. However, Xikong Mingyue only lightly blasted out a palm strike. The palm strike transformed into formless runes, causing the void to tremble. Puchi! Luo Huan directly coughed out a mouthful of blood as her countenance paled. It was as though she had just been struck by a terrifying killing intent. She leapt backwards, wanting to leave the platform as she shouted, "I admit, defeat." Even before the sound of the word, defeat, faded, Xikong Mingyue had already blasted out with both his palms, causing Luo Huan's countenance to turn even paler. Her astral souls allowed her body to possess perfect toughness, as well as a tyrannical suppressive force. Against close-range attacks, she was able to skillfully evade them. However, in terms of pure offense and defense, Luo Huan was still considered weak. At this moment, the terrifying torrent of slaughter gushed towards her, wanting to take her life. Luo Huan's silhouette abruptly spun, transforming into a hurricane that enveloped her within. Rumbling sounds rang out as Luo Huan's body was flung through the air. After which, she slammed heavily into the ground. When her lithe and graceful body appeared on the ground, her countenance was already deathly pale as she coughed out large mouthfuls of fresh blood. That haggard countenance of hers truly caused people to feel pity for her. Senior sister. Qin Wentian's countenance stiffened as he stood at the edge of the platform, gazing down at Luo Huan. At the same time, a few silhouettes flickered as they descended from the spectator stands. One of them was Mustang from the Emperor's Star Academy, while the other was actually Mo Qingcheng. "I have some medicinal pills here." Mo Qingcheng retrieved a medicinal pill and fed it to Luo Huan. The moment the pill entered her mouth, Luo Huan felt her entire body cooling down. The medicinal pill seemed to be nourishing her injuries, as though a stream of water was flowing through her body, causing her injuries to slowly recover. At the same time, her blood, qi, and spirit were also recovering. "Is senior sister all right?" Qin Wentian asked Mustang, who was standing beside Luo Huan. The medicinal pill Miss Qingcheng gave her is a second-level high-grade medicinal pill. It should be sufficient to suppress her injuries. Mustang glanced at Mo Qingcheng. Qin Wentian heaved a sigh of relief, as he smiled at Mo Qingcheng. "Don't worry, back then outside the Sky Harmony City, you've also consumed it." Mo Qingcheng smiled as she walked away, causing Qin Wentian to be stunned. So it turned out that back then when he was unconscious, Mo Qingcheng had given him such a precious medicinal pill in order to save him. "I still need to return to the arena, and request for some time to rest." Luo Huan stared in the direction of the Chu Emperor district, as she spoke to the old man beside Chu Tianjiao. "Sure, I'll give you some time to rest." The old man spoke, as Luo Huan closed her eyes and began to meditate. Qin Wentian shifted his gaze over, as a cold light flickered in his eyes as he stared at Xikong Mingyue. "Time for one battle." Xikong Mingyue stared at Qin Wentian, as a cold killing intent flashed in his eyes. However, at this moment, a silhouette appeared in front of Sikong Mingyue, blocking his view of Qin Wentian. There was actually someone who took the initiative to provoke Sikong Mingyue. This person was none other than Gu Xing. This caused an expression of bewilderment to appear on Qin Wentian's face. Why did he feel that Gu Xing was intentionally helping him? Seems like Qin Wentian is undefeatable, the crowd mused. Now, only 3 more participants were left to be eliminated, and the top 9 rankings would be determined. Luo Huan had to return to the arena to fight against another participant, and the loser would have to be eliminated. If Gu Xing was defeated by Sikong Mingyue, he would have to return to the arena as well, and after that, there would be another elimination slot. If that was the case, there would only be 1 slot left. Even if Luo Qianqiu or Orkan wanted to deal with Qin Wentian would still have a chance to return to the arena, and his chances of entering the top 9 were extremely high. However, at this moment, the crowd only saw Qin Wentian lifting his feet, shuttling back and forth between the platforms. Finally, his silhouette stood in front of Third Knight. This battle wasn't for himself, but for Luo Huan. Chapter 129. Sikong Mingyue's strength was obviously much stronger compared to Luo Huan's. Earlier, he must have seen Luo Huan preparing to retreat from the battlefield and shout out the word concede. However, before the word concede could be uttered, Sikong Mingyue had already unleashed a sure kill attack. This was no longer as simple as defeating Luo Huan. In fact, it wasn't as simple as injuring Luo Huan. He wanted to kill her. On the platform of the Junlin banquet, death and injury were unavoidable. However, if there wasn't a deep grudge between them, they would usually stop when the time was right. Earlier, when Luo Huan defeated Fourth Knight, although she made Fourth Knight suffer and lost his combat prowess, she still showed mercy and spared Fourth Knight. When he fought against Sixth Knight, he had no choice but to spit out sword light to injure his opponent's eyes. However, he had also shown mercy and didn't want to take his opponent's life. If Sikong Mingyue wanted revenge, he could have directly attacked him. Maybe, he wouldn't have been so angry. However, Sikong Mingyue's thoughts weren't so simple. He wanted to kill Luo Huan first, before killing him, Qin Wentian. Since this was the case, why would he fear a battle of life and death? The ancient halberd scraped against the ground, emitting an ear-piercing sound that caused the spectators to feel a chill. It was as though Qin Wentian's anger was contained within. His silhouette stood in front of Third Knight. The countenance of the youth was ice-cold, without the slightest hint of sunshine. A gigantic axe appeared in Third Knight's hands. He was proficient in strength attacks and was even stronger than Sixth Knight. However, he wouldn't underestimate Qin Wentian. You can have self-confidence and the conviction to win, but self-confidence doesn't mean arrogance. If you underestimate your opponent, it would give others an opportunity to take advantage of you. Your ancient halberd's attack power isn't strong enough. Third Knight spoke to Qin Wentian. His words were somewhat frivolous, yet his silhouette still gave off a sense of steadiness akin to a mountain. Qin Wentian didn't reply. His footsteps were as simple as before, giving off a feeling of slowness. Third Knight frowned slightly. At this moment, the calm Qin Wentian gave him a faint sense of danger. It was as if he was facing a silent beast that could wake up at any time. At this moment, the crowd saw that Qin Wentian's eyes were closed. He was calm and peaceful. At this moment, he seemed to be asleep. However, his footsteps were still moving forward slowly, as if he was imbued with a mysterious intent. Right now, Qin Wentian stood there, his entire body filled with flaws, yet at the same time, he seemed to have no flaws at all. The frown on Third Knight's face grew even deeper. Brandishing his great axe horizontally, a terrifying and tyrannical aura gushed forth from his body, gushing towards Qin Wentian. However, Qin Wentian's eyes were still closed, as though he couldn't care less about Third Knight's aura. Slash! Third Knight roared in rage as he slashed out with his great axe towards Qin Wentian. This strike was a test. he wanted to see how Qin Wentian was going to attack. At the instant his great axe slashed out, Qin Wentian opened his eyes. At this instant, the aura of the heavens and earth seemed to have changed. Third Knight had a feeling that he was facing an opponent that he couldn't possibly defeat. The Qin Wentian in front of him had an aura that could conquer the heavens. Buzz! A raging wind gusted by, as Qin Wentian's silhouette transformed into a series of afterimages. In that instant, his majestic aura was akin to mountains descending from the heavens, completely crushing Third Knight's aura. At this moment, Qin Wentian was like a god of war. Third Knight couldn't even muster up the will to resist. Mountain Splitter. Qin Wentian's entire body seemed to have sunk into a dream. This strike of his was akin to a god of war. The first stance of the great dream halberd art, Mountain Splitter. This was also the only stance he had up till now. The spectators only saw a mirage as the ancient halberd slashed towards Third Knight with unparalleled might. Third Knight's probing strike was directly crushed into pieces, like a piece of paper, easily torn apart. The spectators only saw Third Knight raising his great axe with great difficulty, slashing out consecutively. However, the speed of the ancient halberd was too fast, too tyrannical. The spectators only saw a flash of light as the great axe was deflected away. Puchi! A light sound rang out as the ancient halberd pierced right into the center of Third Knight's brows. The tip of the halberd, as well as the twin crescent blades, pierced into Third Knight's head at the same time. In that instant, it was more than enough to claim his life. Third Knight fell. Qin Wentian, with just a single strike, killed Third Knight in an overwhelming manner. This was the most crucial moment in the fight for the top 9 rankings. However, at this very moment, the first person to fall from the top 18 appeared. Not only that, it was Third Knight. The duo prides of Snowcloud, the Third Sword, and the Seventh Knight. Among the 7 knights, the first and second knight weren't included. Third Knight was ranked first, yet he had died in battle. In an instant, the entire space seemed to have frozen. The gazes of the spectators were all fixated on that tyrannical youth. This strike was too shocking. So it turns out that he had been concealing his strength all this while. Many people sighed in their hearts. In the direction of the Emperor Star Academy, Mustang and the rest had expressions of bewilderment on their faces. Mustang then turned to the spectators and asked, "Does the Emperor Star Academy have such an innate technique?" "I don't think so. At the very least, I've never seen anyone using it before." "Definitely not. I feel that this halberd technique was fused with his own energy. There's a high possibility that it was created by himself." Someone spoke, causing the hearts of the spectators to tremble. The might of this halberd technique was already comparable to a low-tier, Earth-grade innate technique. Not only that, it was the most perfect strike of an Earth-grade innate technique. Although Qin Wentian had cultivated a mid-tier Earth-grade innate technique, he was after all only at the 7th level of arterial circulation. It was impossible for him to cultivate it to the point of perfection. However, the halberd strike he executed earlier was comparable to a perfect Earth-grade low-tier innate technique. In fact, if he was stronger, the grade of his innate technique would be even higher. As for those who had seen Qin Wentian's divine inscription painting before, they faintly felt a sense of familiarity from this innate technique. Could it be that the divine innate technique had some sort of connection with the divine innate technique? Qin Wentian pulled out his ancient halberd, as the spectators went up the platform to collect the corpse. At the same time, the battle on the other side also concluded. When Gu Xing saw that Qin Wentian had killed Third Knight, he immediately left the platform. As such, there were only 9 people left on the platform. Below the platform, there were still Luo Huan and Gu Xing. The two of them still had the qualifications to challenge again. This also meant that in the second round, there were only 2 remaining battles, and Luo Huan and Gu Xing would be the ones to choose. Sikong Mingyue's gaze shifted in the direction of Qin Wentian, as a terrifying killing intent gushed towards Qin Wentian. Qin Wentian similarly stared at him, his countenance calm. After which, the ancient halberd in his hands slowly lifted up. The tip of the halberd was pointed directly at Sikong Mingyue. His meaning was clear even without words. The spectators could feel the two auras clashing against each other in the air. Sikong Mingyue's aura was filled with killing intent, while Qin Wentian's aura seemed calm, yet it contained an unwavering determination. Sikong Mingyue was the second most popular candidate for the Junlin banquet this time around. Qin Wentian's ancient halberd was pointed directly at his opponent, wanting to contend against Sikong Mingyue in the Junlin banquet. What was even more interesting was that both Sikong Mingyue and Qin Wentian had already secured a spot in the top 9 rankings of the Junlin banquet. It was only a matter of time before the two of them fought against each other. Would Qin Wentian be able to shake Sikong Mingyue? Sikong Mingyue was one of the duo prides, and his talent was on par with Xiao Lvl. In this Junlin banquet, he was the strongest in Snowcloud. The spectators all felt a surge of heat coursing through their bodies. Although they didn't think highly of Qin Wentian, they still wanted to see such a battle. This kind of confrontation only added more color to the Junlin banquet, causing the spectators to be filled with anticipation. Luo Huan and Gu Xing shouldn't choose to challenge Qin Wentian. If that's the case, Qin Wentian has already secured a spot in the top 9 rankings. What a pity that I didn't bet on him. Some people were silently regretting. Before the second round of the Junlin banquet, the payout rate for Qin Wentian to obtain a spot in the top 9 rankings was 1-4. If they had bet on him, they would have earned quite a bit. At this moment, Fatty Fan Lu was already laughing in his heart. He had already obtained the 9th rank. Next, he would have to see if Qin Wentian could work hard and obtain a spot in the top 3 rankings. If he did so, he, Fan Lu, would definitely become the wealthiest person under the Yuanfu realm. Even those at the Yuanfu realm wouldn't be as wealthy as him. Fan Lu had already started to daydream. Within the crowd, Immortal Drunken Wine and that young man were present as well. However, they were so inconspicuous that no one would notice them. At this moment, the young man laughed. If that's the case, I'll be able to earn at least 100 yuan meteor stones. Later, I'll be able to buy some wine. If that's the case, I won't stand on ceremony. Immortal Drunken Wine also laughed. He was also taken aback. Although he regarded Qin Wentian highly, he hadn't expected that Qin Wentian would be able to kill Third Knight with a single strike. Thinking back to the yuan meteor stones he had casually bet on, a strange thought surfaced in his mind. What if he was not careful and won the bet? Wouldn't that mean that he would be able to drink good wine for a very long time? Naturally, the possibility of this happening was too minuscule. The remaining 2 yuan meteor stones he had bet on Qin Wentian obtaining the top ranking. Chapter 130. At this moment, on the platform, Qin Wentian, Luo Qianxiu, Sikong Mingyue, Second Sword, Orkan, Ho Tai, Lenya, Chu Chen and Jiang Feng, a total of 9 people. 2 of them would have to face Luo Huan and Gu Xing, and the victor would advance to the next round, joining the other 7 and becoming one of the top 9 rankers of the Junlin banquet. Among them, there were quite a few who didn't even participate in the second round. They couldn't be bothered to act, and nobody dared to touch them. For example, Luo Qianxiu, Orkan and Ho Tai. In the second round, they didn't even participate in a single battle. The spectators mostly watched Qin Wentian's battles. Initially, they thought that Qin Wentian would be eliminated very quickly, but he defeated his opponents step by step, causing the spectators to have a whole new level of respect for him. And now, he was already 1 foot into the top 9 rankers. Such an experience caused many to admire him. In the royal capital, the majority of the people knew of Qin Wentian of the Sky Harmony City. He had only joined the Emperor's Star Academy for a year, 1 year less than Luo Qianxiu. Yet, he was able to achieve such an achievement. The 2 of you, it's time to choose your opponents. The old man beside Chu Tianjiao spoke to Luo Huan and Gu Xing. After Luo Huan finished regulating her qi, she opened her eyes as a beautiful smile blossomed on her face. She stood up and nodded her head in the direction of Mo Qingcheng, expressing her gratitude. The second-level high-grade medicinal pill that Imo Qingqing had fed her was extremely effective in healing her injuries. This was especially so for the fact that she had consumed the pill the moment she was injured. The medicinal effect instantly spread throughout her body, healing her injuries and allowing her to fight again within a short period of time. As for Gu Xing, he wasn't injured at all. The spectators had already predicted that Gu Xing would definitely be one of the top 9 rankers. Despite his silence, no one dared to underestimate him. The two of them walked up the platform. Luo Huan's opponent was Jiang Feng, ranked number 6 of the 10 prodigies, while Gu Xing's opponent was Leng Ye from the godly General Martial Palace. This kind of choice did not surprise the crowd. If they had to choose, they would also choose between Jiang Feng, Leng Ye, or Chu Chen. Moreover, Chu Chen, who was born in the imperial family, seemed to be more difficult to predict. Therefore, the two of them had chosen an extremely reasonable opponent. As for the final result of the battle, it caused the spectators to sigh with sorrow. Gu Xing defeated Leng Ye, which was within expectations. However, Luo Huan, who had returned injured, also defeated her opponent, Jiang Feng. Luo Huan's combat prowess was even stronger than Jiang Feng, yet she was easily defeated by Xikong Mingyue. From this, one could see how great the disparity between them was. After the battle between Luo Huan and Jiang Feng, the 10 prodigies of the Junlin banquet were all eliminated. Such a scene could not help but make people sigh. In the world of martial arts, if one did not advance, one would fall back. This was a well-known saying. Originally, there were 10 prodigies in the royal capital. The first 5 had already stepped into Yuanfu, while the latter 5 hadn't. This meant that the latter 5 didn't have much of an improvement. Hence, in this year's Junlin banquet, they were all eliminated. Although part of the reason was that Chu and Snowcloud had jointly organized the Junlin banquet, the decline of the latter 5 was already laid out before everyone's eyes. Luo Qianxiu, Orkan, Qin Wentian, Luo Huan, Ho Tai, and Chu Chen could completely replace them. And now, the last 5 of the 10 prodigies had all been eliminated. After this year's Junlin banquet, not a single one of them would be left. At the same time, the top 9 rankers of this year's Junlin banquet were finally announced. They were Xikong Mingyue, Second Sword, Luo Qianxiu, Orkan, Qin Wentian, Luo Huan, Ho Tai, Chu Chen, and Gu Xing. Among them, there were 2 from Snowcloud, Xikong Mingyue and Second Sword. However, these 2 were extremely terrifying existences. Xikong Mingyue was almost certain to become one of the top 3, while Second Sword also had an extremely high chance of becoming one of the top 3. In Chu, there were 7. And the most dazzling was still the Emperor's Star Academy. Because out of the top 9, 4 of them were students from the Emperor's Star Academy. Luo Qianxiu, Orkan, Qin Wentian, and Luo Huan. None of the 4 were weaklings. The Emperor's Star Academy was indeed worthy of its title as the number 1 academy in Chu. Its reputation was accumulated over countless years, and there would often be outstanding geniuses that graduated from the academy. Hence, those with outstanding talent were all willing to enroll in the Emperor's Star Academy to cultivate. Other than the Emperor's Star Academy, the godly General Martial Palace had Ho Tai, and the Royal Academy had Chu Chen. These 2 martial academies were supported by the royal clan. Other than the Emperor's Star Academy, there was only the mysterious youth, Gu Xing, staring at the 9 people on the platform. They didn't feel any sense of complacency. Because, they all understood that after this, there would be even more brutal battles waiting for them. The 9 of them would compete for the final rankings of the Junlin banquet. They would also be facing the strongest opponents. It could be Luo Qianxiu, Xikong Mingyue, or even Second Sword. Following this, any battles they would face would be even more intense than the ones they had experienced before. The difficulty would also be higher. At this moment, from the seats of the Chu Emperor District, a total of 9 people walked up to the platform. Each of these 9 people held onto a square box, within which there was a jade tile. After which, the jade tile was delivered to the 9 people on the platform. In front of Qin Wentian, a person appeared. That person spoke, "Engrave your name on it." Qin Wentian naturally knew the rules of the Junlin banquet. He didn't say anything, and merely engraved the 3 words Qin Wentian on the jade tile. After which, the attendant flipped Qin Wentian's jade medallion over and carried the box away. The 9 attendants stood together, and after that, they placed the 9 medallions into the same box, messing up the sequence of the medallions. After doing all this, they directly stood up and left, leaving the square box with the 9 jade tiles on the platform. Who is willing to flip the cards for the final round? Chu Tianjiao, who was seated on the Chu Emperor's seat, smiled as he spoke to the spectators. "Let me do it." A silhouette stood up. This person was none other than an expert from the Yi clan. "I'll have to trouble Senior Lu Yang then." Chu Tianjiao laughed. Momentarily, Yi Luyang stepped onto the platform, walking towards the 9 jade tiles. He took out the 3 jade tablets and placed them in his hand. Then, with a wave of his hand, the 3 jade tablets floated in the air with their backs facing him. The names engraved on them appeared in front of the crowd. Luo Qianqiu, Second Sword, Luo Huan. These 3 names were imprinted into the eyes of the spectators, causing them to sigh in their hearts. Luo Huan was truly unlucky, to actually be grouped with Luo Qianqiu and Second Sword. The second round of the Junlin banquet would be a group battle. The 9 participants would be divided into 3 groups, and the first, second, and third rankers of each group would be determined. After which, the first ranker of each group would stand on the strongest stage, fighting for the top 3 positions. The experts who obtained second place in each group would also fight together to fight for the 4th to 6th place. The experts who obtained the 3rd place in each group would also fight together to compete for the 7th to 9th places. Luo Huan would have to contend against Luo Qianqiu and Second Sword for a higher ranking. Naturally, she would be unlucky, and there was a high possibility that she would be ranked last. After Yi Luyang displayed the 3 jade tiles to the spectators, he took out another 3 jade tiles and floated them in the air, facing the spectators. Upon seeing the 3 names, a strange expression appeared on the faces of the spectators as they involuntarily cast a glance at Qin Wentian. Earlier, Qin Wentian's ancient halberd had been pointed at Sikong Mingyue, his battle intent surging. Now, they would have the opportunity to clash against each other. The names of the second group were Sikong Mingyue, Qin Wentian, Chu Chen. In that case, the names of the last group were already clear to see. However, Yi Luyang still displayed the names on the jade tile for the spectators to see. They were none other than Orkan, Gu Xing, and Ho Tai. Such a grouping caused the spectators to be filled with intense anticipation. For the final round of the Junlin banquet, there were only 3 groups. Any of the battles would cause the blood of the spectators to boil. Luo Qianqiu, Second Sword, Luo Huan. Sikong Mingyue, Qin Wentian, Chu Chen. Orkan, Gu Xing, Ho Tai. Qin Wentian stood on the platform, only to feel an extremely sharp gaze locking onto him. Shifting his gaze over, he just so happened to see Sikong Mingyue rushing towards him. Even before the battle started, his battle intent was already raging. At this moment, in the Chu Emperor district, Chu Tianjiao stood up from his seat on the azure jadeite dragon seat as he smiled. "I shall announce the rules for the final round of the Junlin banquet. The first, second, and third will be determined. The 3 first rankers will contend for the top 3 rankings. The 3 second rankers will contend for the top 4 and 6 rankings. The 3 third rankers will contend for the top 7 and 9 rankings. In addition, the 7th ranker will be given another chance to challenge the 3 rankers in the top 4 and 6 rankings. The 4th ranker will be given another chance to challenge the 3 rankers in the top 3 rankings. However, the challenger can only start from the last ranker." Chu Tianjiao slowly spoke, confirming the rules for the final round of the Junlin banquet. "Okay, let's end it here for today. Tomorrow, the final ranking battle of the Junlin banquet will commence," Chu Tianjiao announced, causing expressions of dissatisfaction to appear on the faces of the spectators. The groups for the final round of the Junlin banquet had already been decided, but they still had to wait another day for the actual battles to begin. This kind of feeling was simply too unbearable. Let's go to Drunken Wonder to take a look. The groups have already been decided, and the payout rates for the individual battles have already been announced. This is an opportunity. Yeah, the opportunity has come. Every group of 3 will have 3 battles, for a total of 9 battles. The payout rates will also be announced, so we can give it a try. Many people rushed towards the direction of Drunken Wonder, preparing to place their bets. Especially for those who had won a fortune from betting on the top 9 rankings, they naturally wouldn't miss out on this opportunity. Chapter 131. Qin Wentian didn't leave the platform. On the platform opposite him, Sikong Mingyue stood there, staring in his direction. Sikong Mingyue didn't say anything, but a faint killing intent gushed forth from him. His intent was clear even without words. Where are Qin Shang and Qin Ji? Qin Wentian asked Sikong Mingyue. Since Sikong Mingyue would target him because of a single sentence from Xiao Lv. In that case, Sikong Mingyue should have an extremely good relationship with Xiao Lv. He should know of Qin Shang and Qin Ji. Qin Shang, Qin Ji. An expression of contemplation appeared on Sikong Mingyue's face. After which, he stared at Qin Wentian. After receiving the news that their father was surrounded, they should have already rushed to the front lines. After all, they are the relatives of the crown princess of our Snowcloud country. The Snowcloud country wouldn't make things difficult for these 2 minor characters. Sikong Mingyue didn't place Qin Shang and Qin Ji in his heart. These 2 people had no value to the Snowcloud country. Maybe I have to correct you. Sister Qin Yao has no relationship with the Crown Prince of Snowcloud. She will never return to Snowcloud country. Qin Wentian stared at Sikong Mingyue. The 2 of them were in a confrontation. The entire Snowcloud country already knows that she is one of the candidates for the Crown Prince's wife. In that case, no matter where she is, she has to return. If not, where would the face of the Crown Prince of Snowcloud go? Sikong Mingyue spoke as he slowly turned around, his back facing Qin Wentian as he walked away. You should worry about yourself. In tomorrow's battle, if Miss Qin Yao is willing to plead for mercy and apologize to the Crown Prince, perhaps I will go easy on you. Sikong Mingyue spoke with his back facing Qin Wentian. The apology he meant was naturally referring to Qin Yao staying in Chu and not returning to Snowcloud. How arrogant! Qin Wentian stared at the departing back view of Sikong Mingyue. Back then, the Crown Prince of Snowcloud must have made use of Qin Yao to form a deal with Chu Tianjiao. And now, he actually blamed Qin Yao for not returning to Snowcloud? However, if Qin Yao were to remain in Chu, it wouldn't be good for the Crown Prince of Snowcloud, Xiao Lvl, to lose face. After all, Qin Yao couldn't give a single reason to stay. However, if back then Qin Yao had become the sacrificial lamb used by Chu Tianjiao to lure Qin Chuan and was controlled by the royal clan, the Snowcloud country would have used another method. This opponent is not easy to deal with. If you can't do it, then don't bother contending for the top 3 positions. Luo Huan stood beside Qin Wentian as she spoke in a low voice. She had exchanged blows with Sikong Mingyue before, and she knew how tyrannical his attacks were. You don't want to compete? Qin Wentian inclined his head and stared into the distance. He was already standing on the stage of the Junlin banquet, how could he give up so easily? Looking up at the fighting ring, Qin Wentian saw many familiar faces. In the direction of the Mo clan, Mo Qingsheng had a radiant smile on her face. She clenched her fists at him, as though she was encouraging him. In the direction of the Divine Weapon Pavilion, and Lu Yen, Yang Chen and Francis were all there, nodding their heads in acknowledgement. In the direction of the Emperor Star Academy, Teacher Mustang was smiling as he gazed in his direction. Not only that, behind Mustang, Qin Wentian could see a silhouette wearing a conical bamboo hat. This silhouette sat there silently, yet Qin Wendian was still able to recognize him. It was Ren Qianqing. The gazes of the spectators were filled with anticipation, hoping that he would be able to unleash his own radiance in the final round of the Junlin banquet. Although Luo Qianqiu was a student of the Emperor Star Academy, Luo Qianqiu didn't represent the Emperor Star Academy. In fact, it could even be said that the Emperor Star Academy wanted to obstruct him. He represented the Nine Mystical Palace. Orkan was also a student of the Emperor Star Academy, but because he was from the O clan of the royal capital, he represented the O clan more than the Emperor Star Academy. Only he, Qin Wendian and Luo Huan, were the purest students of the Emperor Star Academy. What the Emperor Star Academy hoped to see the most was Qin Wendian and Luo Huan's dazzling performance. Qin Wendian, upon seeing that those from the Emperor Star Academy had yet to depart, strode forth, arriving at the spectator stands of the Emperor Star Academy. "What's the matter?" Mustang smiled as he saw Qin Wendian walking over. "Teacher, I want to go to the Astral River Hall, but I don't have the authority to enter," Qin Wendian replied. "I'll bring you there," Ren Qianqing, who was wearing a conical bamboo hat, calmly spoke, directly opening the back door for Qin Wendian. "Okay." Qin Wendian nodded his head with a smile as he followed Ren Qianqing, heading towards the Emperor Star Academy. Today, the gambling dens of the royal capital, Heaven's Wonder, were all filled to the brim with people. This was especially so for the Drunken Wonder Inn, which was located close to the Chu Emperor district. The groups for the first round of the third round had already been determined, and the payout rates for the 9 battles were all revealed. In the first group, Luo Qianqiu, second sword, Luo Huan. Luo Qianqiu was the most favored, followed by second sword, and then Luo Huan. In the second group, Xikong Mingyue, Qin Wendian, Chu Chen, Xikong Mingyue was the most favored. As for Qin Wendian and Chu Chen, their odds were 50-50. In other words, for the battle between Qin Wendian and Chu Chen, regardless of who won, the payout rate would be 1/2. It all depended on who you believed in. In the third group, Orkan, Gu Xing, Ho Tai. Orkan was the most favored, followed by Gu Xing, and finally Ho Tai. In each of the 3 groups, the most favored were Luo Qianqiu, Xikong Mingyue, and Orkan. The payout rates for these 3 to obtain the top 3 rankings were also the lowest. The payout rate for Qin Wendian to obtain the championship was still the same, 1/400. However, the payout rate for him to obtain the top 3 rankings was slightly different, 1/80th. But this wouldn't change anything, because there were still very few people who believed in Qin Wendian. It was simply too difficult for him to enter the top 3. Firstly, he would definitely lose to Xikong Mingyue. If he wanted to enter the top 3, there was only a single method, and that was to obtain the 4th or 7th ranking. After that, he would continue to slaughter his way through, fighting against the last person other than Luo Qianqiu and Xikong Mingyue. However, the difficulty of doing so was simply too great. It was practically impossible. As for Luo Qianqiu and Xikong Mingyue, both of them were deemed to be undefeatable. There was still no one in the Emperor Star Academy. The students of the Emperor Star Academy paid much more attention to the Junlin banquet compared to the other academies. This was because the students of the Emperor Star Academy were frequent guests of the Junlin banquet. They all hoped that one day, they would also be able to stand there, their names shaking the entire Chu country. 5th level of the Astral River Hall. Qin Wendian sat cross-legged. This time around, he didn't walk slowly like before. Instead, he walked up to the 5th level in a single breath. Inclining his head, he could see the starry sky and the astral river. Rings of runic inscriptions converged together, transforming into a terrifying fist light. From the top to the bottom, fist shadows filled the skies, directly piercing into his sea of consciousness. Boom! Qin Wendian's will unceasingly withstood the tremors, as though his mind was unceasingly ringing. However, he was still as steady as a boulder. Upon reaching the 5th level, he could still clearly see the runic inscriptions of the astral river, as well as the tremors of the incoming attacks. If it was someone else, they wouldn't even be able to sense it. This was something bestowed upon him by his powerful perception. After enduring the tremors for so long on the 5th level, Qin Wendian gradually got used to the pressure of the attacks, and was able to withstand it. However, he still didn't recklessly advance upwards. Previously, when he entered the 6th level, he had experienced for himself how terrifying the attacks there were. The sky gradually darkened. In the Astral River Hall, there was a starry sky in the 5th level. However, other than the old guard, there was no one else in the vicinity of the Astral River Hall. The night deepened. At this moment, a female student who had just returned to the Emperor's Star Academy was currently lying on the ground. She inclined her head and stared at the starry sky, as a smile appeared on her face. She had heard that there were 4 students from the Emperor's Star Academy participating in the Junlin banquet. All of them were so dazzling. When would she be able to be like them? At this moment, a beam of light flashed over, causing the female student to be stunned. In the skies, it was as though another piece of the night sky had appeared, illuminating the entire Emperor's Star Academy. The female student abruptly stood up, casting her gaze in the direction of the source of the light. In a certain direction, a resplendent burst of light, akin to the starry skies, erupted forth. It's the Astral River Hall. The light that flashed for a brief moment last time shone brightly again. The body of the female student trembled slightly. After which, she sprinted in the direction of the Astral River Hall. When she arrived at the entrance of the Astral River Hall, her heart was filled with intense shock as she stared at the radiance of the 6th level. The 6th level, someone had stepped into the 6th level of the Astral River Hall. Which senior of the Emperor's Star Academy was this? She had heard of the legends of the Astral River Hall before. Stepping into the 6th level meant that one would have the opportunity to form an innate connection with an astral constellation from the 6th heavenly layer. Normally speaking, even for terrifying existences at the Heavenly Dipper realm, they would only be able to form an innate connection with an astral constellation from the 4th heavenly layer. How strong would one's astral perception be when it came to the 6th level? Not only that, a terrifying astral perception could only allow one's consciousness to reach the astral river from the 6th heavenly layer. However, the pressure from there was sufficient to cause one's will to collapse. The night sky of the Emperor's Star Academy was lit up, and the light didn't extinguish even after a long time. Those who remained in the Emperor's Star Academy were all sighing in admiration as they speculated. To think that there was actually such a powerful senior in the Emperor's Star Academy. Wasn't his astral perception a little too terrifying? The night grew darker and darker, yet the female student was still sitting in a corner far away from the Astral River Hall. Her eyes were slightly closed, as though she was dozing off. At this moment, a slight movement could be heard. The female student abruptly opened her eyes, and after which, she saw the silhouette of a youth slowly walking out from the Astral River Hall. As though he could feel her gaze, the eyes of the youth shifted in her direction, before turning and departing. However, the heart of the female student pounded violently, and she involuntarily let out a cry of surprise. After which, she covered her mouth with her hands, as an expression of extreme shock appeared on her face. Who did she see? That person was none other than Qin Wendian. Raising her head, the Astral River Hall was no longer lit up, and the starry skies were no longer visible. However, the heart of the female student was unable to calm down for a long time. You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.